Good viewer, you are watching Xirtus.
This next story has been suppressed by mainstream media. Let's go to Andreas for more.
Everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.
Hello. Welcome to the Xirtus. Tune in for another exciting episode of wonder, imagination, and discovery.
Recent Tartarians.
Она образует всеобщие закономерности, определяющие законы классической физики для нашего
Sometimes I
мира.
look at the moon and just think, the skin's beautiful. Baby, when I met you, there was peace unknown.
Что касается энергии наномер, то она превышает ядерную в немыслимое число раз – 10 в 74 степени.
That's it. That's it. That's it. With your arms now. That's it. That's it.
Thank you for watching Xirtus. Keep listening. Remember, if you enjoyed the video, please follow and subscribe and share and support. It really helps. Coming up next, Xirtus.
By the way, that's gone. If you didn't record that, that's gone forever. It's gone.
You know what? We should just make Raph do it here. What's up, Raph?
Yo,
It's a nice shirt.
welcome
you got
everyone.
there. Look, it's a nice shirt.
Is NEUROPA.
Oh wait, do it again. That was very cool. That was cool.
Welcome everybody. This is NEUROPA with Manifestopheles.
What's up, Manifestopheles?
Hey there, guys. I'm happy to be here. It's a rare honor. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Sweet. What's up? So I'll let Raph do a bit more of an introduction
Yes.
about your work, but you're gonna have a presentation for us, which is pretty cool. So I'm excited
Yes.
about that.
So Alexander came into contact with me and I guess Nachiketa and some others, as he's also been doing research into history. As you guys know by now, I've been publishing all these David Ewing Jr. interviews and people have been watching your stuff, Andreas, and all of that. And since we now have someone who maybe has a particular interest in one of these strange subgroups, as I said in the talk just before, it seems everyone's a Cossack, but Nosovsky actually has some template for this. But I won't talk too much about it. I'll let Alexander Manifestopheles speak. And yeah,
Very
let's
cool.
see where we'll arrive.
All right. So so yeah, I'm going to share my screen in a minute. So basically, what the topic for today, at least for my presentation, is about the Arvanites and the Albanians. It's a difficult topic. There are arguments for them being one and the same people. There are arguments for them being different people. There are definitely some differences. But the Arvanites specifically played a big role in the liberation of Greece from the Ottoman Empire, and that's what we're basically going to discuss today. Let me see. Now I need to find. Oh yeah, present the screen. Now I have to share screen with these two monitors. Yeah. Okay, now I have to select the correct one. Sorry about that. I should have prepared that beforehand.
That's how they get you.
Yeah, exactly.
time.
All right, so
Here we go.
okay, there you go. All right, excellent. Now I need to open the other one. All right, so who are the Arvanites? So we the birthplace of the Arvanites is in Epirus. Is generally considered to be Epirus. Epirus is a region in the northwest of Greece, bordering to Albania. It's actually it's considered to be divided between Greece and Albania. So you have North Epirus allegedly and and Greek Epirus. and Greece has the main claim on the region, because in North Epirus in Albania they have allegedly a group of a Greek minority. But anyway, that's a long story. So there are some terms connected to the Albanians, which are the following: so Epirus, Iberia, Morea, and Dardania. There are others as well. Calabria is one of them, for example, because you also have Albanians in Italy. I'll get to those later on. But I think these are the most important. So Epirus is the birthplace. Iberia is more or less synonymous. Morea is the Peloponnese. So in the Middle Ages, they came to the Peloponnese. I'll get to that later on as well. And Dardania is considered to be synonymous with Kosovo at today. So that's another long story. We'll get to all those in a minute. Additionally, there are two descriptors for Albanians at large. One is Arborors, that largely corresponds to the Arvanites, the Christian branch, let's say nowadays, of the Albanians, and Shqiptar, which is their endonym of the Albanian population themselves. And there's several interpretations of where that word comes from. So Shqiptar is said to come from either so the folk etymology is that it is connected to the Shqiponju, which is the eagle. But there's also claims about it simply meaning that you speak a comprehensible language that people can understand, so that they speak the same language. So next we have the core of the Albanian way of life, which is the Fara. The Fara is the tribe. There are two main tribes, which are the Geg and Tusk. So the Geg live in the north of Albania. They're a bit taller. They live in the mountains. They're less inclined to travel and things like that. They have a harsher lifestyle and a harsher dialect as well. And they're generally blonde and brachycephalic. There's a tendency for brachycephaly within the Geg population, let's say. While the Tusk, on the other hand, are the southern Albanians. They're mostly urban, not necessarily urban, but they're mostly like in settlements on the mainland rather than in the mountains, let's say. They were historically more preoccupied with travel, trade, and so on. So they were a bit more adventurous. So as a consequence, the Tusk have expanded all over Europe. Well, all over the Mediterranean, I should say. So there are Tusk colonies in Italy, but they also exist in Croatia, in Romania, in all across the Balkan, as well as in Greece. So the Arvanites are considered to be mostly descendants of the Tusk Albanians. The other tribes that I mentioned here are subcategories, mostly of the Tusk. So we have the Cham, the Ljap, and then we have the different names for Arboror, Arberesh, Arbanasi, Arnaut. The Arnauts are the Albanians in Turkey. So that's the Turkish name for Albanians, etc. As the further down the line we go, here the less clear it becomes what the exact Fara is that people come from. There are even in modern day Arvanitica, there are still Geg elements preserved in the language. So it's more of a mixture, and that has to do with their history, which you will get to in a minute as well. As a consequence of their tribal lifestyle, we have a tendency for or let's say a great emphasis in their lifestyle for racial purity. Arvanites are very, they have a great preference, let's say, to marry their own kind and try to preserve their Fara. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, Fara specifically means the seed. So if you go out in the field to sow the seed for the next harvest, that's the fara, the bag with the seeds. All right. After that, we have so these are the core principles, let's say, of the Albanian lifestyle as well. Those are the kanun. The kanun is the official, the official tribal legislation that existed in Albania for the longest time, since the Middle Ages, and is still being followed in large part in several territories that may be less, how do you say, that are further in the outbacks, let's say.
More rural.
Sorry?
More rural.
Yeah, more rural societies, exactly. Yeah, something like that. So the kanun. Okay, I have to admit I don't know all the details. I haven't read the kanun myself. It was written by. I'll have to look that up for a second. The kanun.
You be careful with my ADD, dude. I might just play some techno.
Oh yeah. I don't mind. Music. All right, I got it.
All right.
Well, I can't find the writer anymore. Leke Dukagini. That was the writer. So he's one of the Albanian nobles that ruled at the time. But a big part of the kanun is besa, and the besa is basically is faith. Is their word for faith, but it also means trust, etc. But the thing about the besa is there's a special. It has a special status among Albanians because besa is basically giving your word. So the given word is law, right? So if you give your word, you're obliged to keep it. And to follow through, basically. If you don't, there are legal consequences, and if many of those are not good for your health, let's say. And blood feuds are another aspect of that. So if someone was considered a babesis, so someone who doesn't have faith, or someone who is dishonorable, basically, you could have a blood feud. How do you say, erupt, but obviously that's just one of the reasons it could happen. But usually that's one of the, because usually everything basically revolves around the besa anyway. Then we have the shared language, which is Albanian. There's a lot of how do you say, a lot of interesting things to be said about it. It is considered one of the oldest Indo-European languages. But there's a lot of debate about it. People are undecided about its roots. Most people insist that it derives from a Proto-Albanian dialect, which was spoken in the Balkans, and which can be found all the way to Thrace, basically. So from west to east, there's still remnants of the language. And they claim it was spoken by the Illyrians. So the claim is that the Albanians descend from the Illyrians. We'll get to that in a minute as well. So then we have religion is an interesting topic in Albania. Modern day Albania is obviously majority Muslim, but there's a good number of Catholics as well as Orthodox, especially in North Epirus, which, as I said, has a Greek minority. So they have adopted the Orthodox religion. And then we have common traditions. There's a number of them. The most obvious are the dress. We have the fustanella for the men, and I don't remember what the female dress was called, but I can look it up. Yeah, I can remember. That will take too long. So that's one aspect. Obviously, we see those dresses all over the Balkans. So it doesn't really. I'm not sure if the claim is that the fustanella is an authentic Albanian costume.
The fustanella.
Yeah, that's what it's called. It's basically it's a kilt. And it's they're mountaineers as well, so it's actually fitting. They have similar. It's funny because Scotland is also called what was it, Albany, and things like that. So there's a lot of similarities there, but we probably won't get into those today. But yeah, the fustanella is the traditional Albanian, or rather, actually, the traditional Tusk costume. So the Gag wear a different costume, and they actually have a pair of trousers. But the vest remains similar, and there's another thing as well, because for example, the Albanians themselves, they usually wear these white woolen hats that are called the plies, while the Greek Albanians tend to wear the fezes. You don't see the plies in Greece. So they usually have the red hat, or sometimes they might wear a bandana or something like that. Turbans you don't really see in Greece, but you did see them during the Greek Revolution. So a lot of heroes wear those. We'll get to those later on as well. So, and then lastly, we have basically our warlike customs and mercenary reputation. Well, there's more traditions as well, I should mention. So there's the kurbani. Kurbani are animal sacrifices that all Albanians and Arvanites generally tend to perform in their natural habitat, of course. And the songs and dances are also very important. So, and one of the most important ones is the tamiko, and we'll get to that as well. That's a very controversial topic here in Greece, but we'll get to it in due time. So, as I said, lastly, we have the warlike customs and mercenary reputation. So, Albanians generally and Arvanites have always had the reputation of being a warlike people, and have also worked as mercenaries for various factions. So Arvanite specifically started their career, let's say, as Byzantine mercenaries, according to mainstream history, of course. And later on, obviously, you got the Ottoman Empire. So there were a lot of people that became janissaries, and we'll get into those topics in more detail later on as well. So that's by way of introduction. And now we get to prehistory and antiquity. So this is a very difficult subject, because obviously we're talking about the mainstream theory here. So we're going to proceed based on the Scaligerian timeline and just see what historians and the like have to say. But I wanted to point out this quote as well by Mr. Albert Pike here, who has written a few things about Albanians which are pretty interesting, I think. And basically he says that the Albanian language is the most ancient Indo-European language, and that they're not Gothic or Slavonic or Finns or whatever, but that they descend from the Illyrians. So this is, yeah. It's very interesting why why such an erudite representative of the Luciferian creed, let's say, put so much emphasis on the fact that they're authentic Illyrians. But we'll get to that subject as well. I think there's a core of truth to that, absolutely, but I think it's a bit more complicated. But let's get to that. So we have the Pelasgians. That's where it all starts. Herodotus refers to them as basically the Proto-Hellenes. They're referred to today as the Proto-Hellenes. There is a lot of debate about how far they are related to the Phoenicians as well. But apparently there was a substratum, an indigenous people in Greece, as well as in Italy and other regions around the Mediterranean, before the Greeks arrived. And those are called the Pelasgians. Now, there's a few interesting things about those, because the word pelasgos in Greek is etymologically connected to pelargos. And pelargos is the stork. So the stork is a migratory bird, and apparently the name of the stork in Greek is related to the name for the to the name for the Pelasgians. Now the funny thing is, in Albanian, the word for stork, or Arvanitica as well, is lelek, and that's what also my my nom de plume, if you've noticed, is lelekas on my current how do you say, on my current profile, let's say, on StreamYard. So the Lelejes is another word it's another tribe that is also considered like a Proto-Hellenic tribe, and it just so happens that their name is synonymous to the name of the Pelasgians in a different language, in a language that is supposed to be the successor, basically, of the Pelasgian language. So that's one thing. And then we have a number of sub branches, let's say, of the Pelasgians, like the Illyrians and the Dorians, the Etruscans, the Macedonians, the Dardanians, the Thracians, the Dacians, and the Scythians, etc. Well, the Scythians are a different. I shouldn't have mentioned those in the same breath. The Scythians are a different story, but obviously Herodotus also recognizes them as cousins, basically, of the Greeks. So there is definitely some relation there, and the Thracians are said to have descended from the Scythians. And the Thracians, from the Thracians we get a number of toponyms and things that have survived to this day in Romania. And in Romanian they still use Albanian, let's say, words, or basically words with the same roots. And as such, I think we can theorize with some accuracy, let's say, that they're related. So anyway, according to Herodotus, we have the arrival of Cadmus. There are different accounts. So people, on the one hand, people are claiming that Cadmus was a Phoenician. On the other, others are claiming he was Greek, and others are claiming he was Albanian, obviously. But he was born in Epirus, or at least he lived in Epirus, or ruled in Epirus. And there was this whole story that his father, I think it was his father whose name was Phoenix, but I'm not sure. But he sent him on a mission to find Europa. So Europa was abducted by Zeus. We all know the story. He transformed into a bull. He took Europa with him. And, after this event, we named the continent Europa for some reason. So Cadmus went to go look for her. So he went on an odyssey of his own, let's say. He wasn't able to find her. Went back. I think he went to, was it the Oracle of Delphi or Dodona? Well, he went to one oracle or another at any rate, and they told him that he should stop looking for her because he wasn't going to find her, and that there was, he had a different destiny ahead of him, let's say. So he basically came back to Greece at some point with a number of men by his side, who are referred to by Herodotus as Yephirei. Yephireos basically means it's something with bridge. Yephira is the bridge, so you could say the bridge builders, maybe. And I personally, my theory is that the word pontifex is like a translation of that word, and that's where the Pontifex Maximus comes from, both in the case of the Kaiser as well as the Pope. But at any rate, the Yephirei basically, I think, are Hebrews, right? So because that's, basically Hebrews and Phoenicians are kind of the same thing. They had the same alphabet. And they basically provided the basis for the Hellenic alphabet. And that's what Cadmus created. That's what he's known for. The major innovation that the Greeks made with the alphabet was basically the vowels. We got all the how do you say, all the other letters, let's say from the Phoenicians. So where was I going with this? Well, yeah. So Cadmus killed a dragon, and he took his teeth, and he sowed them in the ground, and then from the teeth the Molossians grew, and that's where these tribes come from. And those were the first Greeks, basically. He taught them the language and things like that. That's basically the foundation myth of ancient Greece, abridged. And let's see. Oh yeah. Okay, then we have so then we have a bunch of connections here, right? The Danaans are interesting in this regard because the Danaans are thought to come from the tribe of Dan. So they're thought to be Hebrews. They came to Greece, basically, and they're also related to the Dardanians. And there's a whole thing because the Albanians, Dardania is a big thing in their worldview, let's say. I'll have to get into that in a minute. Actually, yeah. So because the thing is, there's this whole region above. Where is it? Hey, did I stop sharing, or did
No, I just pulled you aside for a second. So
yeah, good idea.
I thought you were visualizing.
So yeah, you got this whole region that's called Dardania that was originally called Moesia by the Latins, by the Romans, and it is theorized by modern day Albanian nationalists and theorists and whatever that's the original location of Troy, because we all know that the Troy that what was the German guy who found it in Turkey, that's a fraud,
right?
I think we can agree on that.
Agreed.
Albanians claim that it's in Kosovo, basically.
Yeah,
so,
I think that makes more sense.
Yeah, but there's a lot of reasons to think that there might be something to this because, as I said, it was originally called Moesia,
right,
which indicates obviously a connection with Moses, and obviously there's supposed to be a connection between the Dardanians and the Hebrews and the tribe of Dan, actually. So it's a long story, and I'll get back to that because I have
that
some
would be
theories
really,
about that.
We'd love to think about that a bit because that'd be interesting to connect with Mostar and Kosovo. I mean, all right, I'll let you keep going.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, that's towards the end, so I hope we'll get there.
I'll hold it back.
But yeah. But then we have Alexander the Great. He's a big topic as well because he's basically contested by 3 countries at the moment. We have North Macedonia, we have Greece, and we have Albania. And obviously, Alexander the Great was a Macedonian. There are some cultural differences that indicate that he wasn't exactly Greek. There was because, for example, the Macedonians rode on horses, while the Greeks still used chariots. That's one thing that the Macedonians got from the Scythians or whatever. So they had different customs in some regards. They obviously had a lot in common, and but the same goes for the Thracians and the Illyrians as well. They all, I think the lingua franca was still Greek, so they were still communicating with each other in Greek mostly, but they had their own traditions. And I think the whole northern part above Greece, the whole region from Albania all the way to modern day Romania, was basically speaking dialects of the same language that has now become Albanian, basically. So yeah, and then we get the Roman Empire, and the Roman Empire is pretty interesting too because it seems to be pretty. I mean, it is invested in Albania because we've got the Ignatian road that goes through Albania, through Greece.
Totally, like the Muslims and the Christians are
exactly
want money out of that.
Yeah, exactly. So, and the Albanians, their role, like throughout history, was protecting that road as well. Protecting that stretch
which is why certain which is interesting because a lot of people in the Muslim regions weren't allowed even to convert to Islam at a certain point because they wanted to collect taxes on them, so they had to. But Albanians, there's a certain class of Albanians that were converted, and the others that weren't. So I mean that's a unique circumstance as well, which is very similar to Bosnia.
Yeah, exactly. So so yeah, that's we'll get more into the Roman Empire in a minute as well. So okay, so here we have a map of the Greek Albanian villages. This is honestly just scratching the surface. These are, as you can see, this is Morea, this is Peloponnesos, and then we have Attica here and Evia. So these are the most dominant areas. You can see that Attica, which is where Athens is you could almost say it's even more dominant than the Peloponnese, which is considered like a big Arvanite stronghold, let's say, since the Middle Ages. And but at least you can get an idea. You know, there's so many places where they spoke this language. But yeah, we'll get to that later on as well. But here's the kicker. So apparently there are root words in Greek that are similar to Albanian or to Arvanitica. Depends on who you ask. It's still the same language, in my opinion. Objectively, it's the same language. So this and specifically, we find those words in the Homeric epics, right? So we have, let's say, one of the most famous examples, I'd say, is the word dris. Dris is the oak, right? And that's connected to dru in Albanian, or dru, and obviously to druid in Gaelic, right? To the druids. But there are many more examples as well. So let's say the mind, right? Medome. And obviously that's connected to the mentor, like for example in Latin, sorry, and so on. There's a lot of examples. Dromos, so the road is oudos. Nowadays it's odos in modern Greek, or dromos, and so on. So yeah, just some examples. It gets pretty abstract on that front. So yeah. So then we have Byzantium and Illyricum. So I should probably have included Rome as well, but it's basically the same history in large part. But the thing is, like in the Byzantine era, the entirety of Greece, for the most part, including a large part of the actually no, I should say the entirety of the Balkans, was called the Illyrian Peninsula. Now, obviously, there's a lot of debate of what that means. Were they all Albanians? Well, maybe, probably not, but majority. I mean, does that mean that they had like a how do you say, like an association with the area, with that particular people, maybe? So yeah. At any rate, there are some interesting topics. Sorry?
Oh, it's like a patronage, kind of.
Yeah. That's basically what happened. Yeah. Because Illyricum was basically a Roman province, one of the provinces, and that was basically the entirety of Greece, including a large part of the Balkans. So yeah, at any rate, there are some interesting things to discuss about Byzantium. So there were, especially in the early years, there were a lot of tensions between the Romans and the pagan Greeks, the Christian Romans and the pagan Greeks. Allegedly, there were a lot of temples vandalized, and scriptures were destroyed and things like that. And Greek paganism was what's the word again? Was oppressed. Yeah. Was oppressed and things like that. So yeah, it's kind of a weird story there, because in the meanwhile, Greek was the official language of the Byzantine Empire. So it's kind of strange how they view the Greeks, the Hellenes. They viewed them as a different people. and were so hostile against him. Obviously, that changed with the years. So at some point, there was I don't remember who it was, but there was an emperor who started showing an interest in Hellenic culture, allegedly, and brought it all back. And I'm not sure if he was or wasn't the emperor who instituted the Greek language as the official language of the Roman Empire at the time. But at any rate, he made Greek philology and philosophy popular again, and all that stuff. So people could advance scientifically and things like that. So we weren't living in the dark ages anymore. So yeah, that's all very, very nice. But yeah, in the meantime, we have the main story about the descent of the Arvanites in Greece. The official story is that they came in the 14th century. And that they were invited by the Byzantines to occupy the lands, to protect them, and to cultivate them. But even that is disputed, because there are indications that they may have come in the 11th century or maybe even earlier. While at the same time, there are people, as I've showed here, that claim that they've always been here, basically. So yeah, it's a bit of a strange story. But we have, for example, Leon Zouros, who was a Greek knight, but there are claims that he was Albanian or that he was Arvanitis, and he ruled in Morea. He ruled in Nafplio specifically, and Nafplio has a big reputation for being an Arvanite city. It's one of the most famous, you could say, if there's such a thing as a famous Arvanite city, it has to be Nafplio. That's obviously assuming that you're talking to someone who knows what the Arvanites are and everything like that. But anyway, he ruled there, and there was a whole story. He fought the Frankish Crusaders and stuff, and before he got defeated, he jumped off a cliff with his horse and all that stuff. Yeah. But anyway, he was there from the 11th century, and his name, like the Skouros dynasty, is one of the famous Albanian dynasties as well. So because of that, there seems to be a relation, which indicates that the Arvanites had been in Morea earlier. Obviously, this is just one indication of change in the timeline, but I think there are way more that we can get into. And then we have the Akritas.
I just want to interject, because if you think about, a lot of people don't get to choose. You're baptized as a baby at this point, especially, and so all of a sudden you're taxed because the amount of people in your village. That's how many people have to pay taxes to that church, right? Yeah. Or if you're in a village that the Janissaries are collecting, so they're taking kids to be soldiers for the caliphate. So it's kind of interesting, this intersection, and that a lot of these are happening in the same place on top of each other, so that these Yeah,
I completely agree, and it gets crazier. But we'll have to get back to the shrinking of the timeline later on, because there's a lot of stuff I need to cover. But so we have the Akrites. I don't know if you've heard of those. Those are pretty famous generally, you could say. The Akrites were the Byzantine border guard. So they were employed on the easternmost border of Anatolia, and on the western and northernmost border of Greece, as well as in other areas like the southernmost borders of the Peloponnese, and in Crete maybe, and other places like that. And they were considered to be heroes. So there are songs written about them. The most famous one is the Yanis Akritas, and his name is a portmanteau, actually. So his name is actually
the Digenes, or the Digenes, or whatever. Digenes Akritas.
Exactly. Yeah. So okay. he comes from two bloodlines. So the story is that he's half Greek, half Saracen or something, and that he had a giant posture. And it's also funny that he fought giant Saracens. They were giants. So there's a whole
Yeah, so it's like
there's a hook in that regard
it's
as
a
well.
dude named Basil, and he fights the two blood border lord. I mean, what could that be? Alluding to his Greek and Arabic blood, the two blood border lord.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, but that seemed to have been a thing in the Roman Empire, that they had these tribes that they put on their borders to protect them, basically. And the Arvanites there are theories, let's say, that the Arvanites were part of that. Let's say, if not, they were the Akrites themselves. So that we have. Kostas Bidis, he's written a famous book about the Arvanites, and he makes claims like this as well. So, for example, the Sulyots, we'll get to those in a minute as well. Those were border guards in the northwest in Epirus, in the mountains of Epirus, and things like that. So there are connections there with the Akrites as well. Now, then we have the dynasty of the Paleologi. The Paleologi is also interesting because the name Paleologos just means it's basically means the same as archaeologist, but then instead of instead of archaic, it's just old. So he who studies the old things, I guess. So the dynasty of the Paleologoi, they were basically the last dynasty of Byzantine emperors, basically. During the fall of Constantinople. And they were famous for employing a large number of Arvanite mercenaries, especially during their last stand in Mistra, which is also in Morea, where they fought the Ottomans and this and that. And there are the big, they have the big castles of Mistra, which were allegedly occupied by the Byzantines at the time with their Arvanite guard. So yeah, there's a whole thing there as well. So they have a special relationship with the Byzantines. They are considered Roman citizens. They are considered Romans, Romyi, right? That's the word that the Greeks use for that. Nationality, let's say. And not only that, they had pretty a pretty privileged status even within the Byzantine Empire, relatively speaking. They assisted the Paleologi in retaking Constantinople, and then it got reconquered by the Ottomans. There's a lot of weird things with that story as well, right? So you have the Fourth Crusade. They sack Constantinople. They split up the Byzantine, the Greek and Anatolian territory amongst themselves. And for a while, we have this thing called Fragokratia. So I'll get to that. Actually, maybe I should just get to it. So we have post-Byzantium and the Greek Middle Ages. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. So after the fall of Constantinople, we have a number of things happening, right? So first off, we have the Fourth Crusade. They split up, as I said, the Byzantine territories among themselves. We have a number of Frankish, i.e., European nobles, contesting for power in the region. And at the same time, we have let's see, well, now I'm getting confused myself. Well, anyway, I think the order should be different here. So the Skanderbeg is later on, because that's after the Ottoman invasion. So we have the Kingdom of Albania. Let me just check, because now I'm getting, because the thing is that these two entities, I think I have a picture. No, it's I'll get there in 2 more slides. Kingdom of Albania. So we have 2 kingdoms, right? We have the Kingdom of Albania and the Principality of Albania. Yeah, no, I was right. So the order needs to be reversed. Principality of Arvanon. Okay, no. It is correct. It is actually correct. Okay. But the Stratioti still need to move. Okay, well, at any rate. Okay, sorry for that. We have the Fourth Crusade. They how do you say it? Constantinople is temporarily sacked. We have an era of Fragocratia. So we have a number of Venetian, Frankish, Genoese, and what was the other one? And what are they called? The the not the Spaniards, the other guys that are in Spain, the minority, let's say. The Catalonians, I think. The Catalans. Yeah. So the Catalans are a big problem in Greece for some reason, and they're also described as giants and stuff, and there's a whole thing with them. So everybody hated them, especially the Arvanites. But yeah, that's because they were also mercenaries. So they were like our rivals. Anyway. They reconquered Constantinople from the Franks, the Paleologi, and then it got conquered by the Ottomans. Then we get the rise of the Principality of Arvanon. So that's when Skanderbeg comes in power, and he basically is the last bastion of Christianity. They fight the Turks for 30 years. He kills all the Turks until it's a war of attrition. At some point, they get conquered, but then from his armies, allegedly, the Arvanites emerged. And from them, we get the Stratioti. And the Stratioti are a new class of light cavalry mercenaries that are taking Europe by storm. And they're basically, there's even depictions where they fight the Swiss mercenaries. So there's a lot. It's a really strange time. That's around the around the 15th century, I think. So there's a lot of things happening in between. We had the Albanian Kingdom of Albania as well, where we had a Frankish king for a while. Let's see, what was it again? Kingdom of Albania, Anjou. He was from the House of Anjou. I don't remember what. Charles of Anjou. Yeah, he was the king of Albania for a while. And that fell too, and then they spread out basically across the area, and mostly settled in either Italy or Greece. So a lot of them fled to Calabria, fled for the Ottomans, that is. So as you can tell, the whole medieval era in Greece is very murky, right? It's very hard to get a grip on what's happening actually in this era. I'm still trying to get a grasp on it, let's say. But what we see, for example, right, this is a cadre of Arvanite Stratioti, and this is prior to the Ottoman occupation, allegedly. And we already can see the crescent on their flag. So there's some weird things happening in these, in these depictions and things like that. And also these hats. I don't know. There's something about these guys. But yeah, anyway. But they were allegedly, so the Stratioti are very interesting as well, because they were often employed by the Venetians. They were often referred to as either Albanese or Greci. So those terms at those times were synonymous. And so in that time, basically, the Albanians and Greeks apparently didn't distinguish among themselves. But what we do know is that they came from both Morea and Epirus. So we had the Albanese were in Epirus, and the Greci were in Morea. So yeah, we have Skanderbeg's arms. I just wanted to show these. Those are pretty interesting because there are connections. Obviously, because Albania is a majority Muslim country, there are connections theorizing, claiming that Skanderbeg is connected to Dhul Qarnayn from the Quran. And obviously he has a hornet helmet. These are reconstructions. So the originals don't exist. So we have no idea what they might have actually looked like. But this is what we get from the depictions and things. And I think the helmet looks pretty badass. So, I have nothing against it.
Yeah, wild, like goat head straight on.
Yeah, right.
Samson,
yeah, I mean, there's
Samson took a goat head and like killed a bunch of people with it. It's pretty basic.
Yeah, and it's not just that. It's the roses are pretty interesting as well. And there's an inscription on there. It's in Latin, and it says, what was it? George Castriot's fear of the Turks, or something like that. Something like that. And here we have the maps of the two kingdoms that they basically existed within a short succession of each other, like within maybe 100 years of each other. After the one fell, the other got founded. But yeah, as you can see, it's mostly the same territories. Like there's a slight difference here, and obviously Epirus, this part, is contested territory anyway. So it might as well be part of, like saying it's part of it or not. That doesn't really make a difference. But the thing is, this area here, I think it was this area specifically, is what's known as Arbaria, and that's where the term arborer comes from, which is the endonym of the Arvanites themselves. That's how they call themselves, arborer. So this is allegedly where we came from. Well, anyway. Then we have the Albanian noble families. There's quite a number of them. As you can see, they have medieval coats of arms. They're very, they're an interesting bunch, because there's a lot of names here that you can tell they're either, they're a mix of Greek and Albanian names, right? So we have the Kalogjeri. Kalogjeri means the monk. We have the Skura. That's the family I mentioned earlier. Leons Gouros is from the Skuro family, allegedly. We have the Angeli in Greek, or Angeli, in Albanian. The Jura, the Arianiti, the Mirdita are also interesting. The Mirdita are, I'm not sure if they're actually a noble family, but they were definitely the most powerful Gag tribe. And the funny thing is, like, their name just basically means good morning. So, and they're an interesting bunch, because there's some etymological connections that I've made. Well, maybe not etymological, but some weird, like, phonetic coincidences, let's say, between Mirdita and the Myrmidons, basically, because the word for good morning in Albanian is mirëmëngjes, right? And the word for and in Greek is mirëmëngji. It's two completely unrelated words, right? But
is it like kind morning or godly morning also?
No, it's good. It's good morning. So mir is good. Good or excellent or great. Well, not great. Great is made. But mir, is good. And yes is just morning. So
I guess mir is like peaceful, maybe like peaceful etymologically.
Maybe, I'm not sure if there's how do you figure where do you derive that from?
So hold on, I just typed in hold on, let me pull this up here for just a second. Sorry to interrupt, but I was looking here and saw Proto-Albanian mir, mild, nice, and then
exactly, yeah.
Someone said from Proto-Balto-Slavic miras, which is peace, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There could be a connection there for sure. Yeah. Personally, I'm not. How do you say?
sold on it.
No. Personally, I can't exclude any Slavic connections. There are definitely Slavic connections in the Albanian language. For example, we say kurva for whore. Yeah, it's. I mean,
Yeah.
at that point, what are the
But
odds?
it makes sense that a family that's kind of like not, you were like questioning if this was even a royal family, right? So like if this family has this interesting name that's like I don't know, this is stretch here, but yeah.
But so as I was saying, the name for and in Greek is mirmigi. So those two words, there's no etymological connection between mirmiges and mirmigi, but there's a phonetic connection. And the thing is that the Myrmidons were actually the name Myrmidon is literally believed to be etymologically connected to Mermigas, or the Mermix actually, which is the old Greek word for ant. So the Myrmidons are called ants. So there's a weird connection with the gags with Mirmiges and Mirdita. Mirdita is just good day rather than good morning. That's the only difference. But that's just speculating on my part. It's just so wild off the thing. But I just thought I'd mention it here. But yeah, so there's some interesting names here. We have Muzaka. That's also an interesting name because that connects to the Musa in Greek, right? The muses, to music. There is, I think I've seen somewhere that they also have another coat of arms with a harp, just like the House of David, as well as. But yeah, so at the same time, there could also be a connection with the Moses thing that we mentioned earlier. So Muzaka is also a very, very important family. And then we have some other names. So Komneno is a bit tenuous because those are Byzantine emperors, and the Angeli as well, by the way. Here, these guys. The Arianiti also, those have had intermarried with the Komneni and things like that. So it's a very mixed bunch. I think even then there's always been relationships between the Greeks and Albanians. They always had this thing where it's kind of like it happens, but we don't talk about it, kind of like that. So anyway, we get to the Ottoman era, and now it gets interesting. So during Ottoman times, the former Roman citizens were still referred to as Rum. So the Greeks and Albanians and the Slavs, well, maybe those of them that were already Orthodox and etc., and the Romanians were all referred to as Rum. So that indicates that they recognize their Roman status, despite them being subjects of the Ottoman Empire. Obviously, we all know on this panel that there may be more connections there than we think, but we'll get to those later on as well.
Yeah, sorry.
Exactly, yeah. So I know I'm saying this a lot, but I have this all planned out. So I promise we'll get there. So obviously, then we have the phenomenon of the Janissaries, and my theory is that the Janissaries are basically the Ottoman equivalent of the Akrites, because they performed a similar role. They were their own. They were like a class of their own. Basically, they were like elite warriors. They were wealthy. They had their, had privileges that others couldn't enjoy, etc. Now, the thing about them was that at some point, I forget when it was exactly, but I can look that up as well. But at some point, a particular sect of Sufi Islam became dominant among the Janissaries, and it's called the Bektashi order. So the Bektashi order was founded, let's see, as a Sufi movement. When was it? 15th century, somewhere around, somewhere around there. So my theory is that the fustanella, the dress of the Albanians and Arvanites, actually derives from the Sufi skirt. And that, I think that makes sense because they also dance a lot, and the dances also have like a ritual aspect to them, you could say, and so on. There's a lot of connections there, and there's there's also a reason why the Greek Arvanites are wearing the fez all the time, and I think that's because most of them used to be Janissaries. So I think that tradition just carried on even after they kind of split off of the Ottoman Empire, let's say. And that's my theory, because I think there was a split with the Ottoman Empire, but I'll get to that as well. Now, there's another faction in the Ottoman Empire that existed from Byzantium, allegedly, and those were the Phanariots. So those guys, they were living in what's now Romania, what was then called Rumeli, mostly, but they were also in Constantinople and Thrace and other areas in those surroundings in the northeast of Greece, as well as in Anatolia. They were, because they were they were Byzantine aristocracy. That's what they're officially considered. And they were Orthodox, obviously, and they were very ambitious, right? So they enjoyed privileges as well. They traveled a lot. They were cosmopolitan. They represented the Ottoman Empire in different countries, things like that. They were they were statesmen, basically. Now the thing is that the Phanariots, they wanted more. Basically, they had plans to conquer the Ottoman Empire from the inside, and they failed on multiple attempts, on multiple occasions, and each time it ended in bloodshed as well. So the Phanariots are a problem that we will discuss further as well. Rumeli, I mentioned as well. Rumeli is basically the Byzantine, the former Byzantine territories. But with Rumeli specifically, we mostly mean Wallachia, and the north of Thrace, let's say, and maybe part of Bulgaria. But like that was the core of the Byzantine Empire, where all the Phanariots are, basically. And then we have the Orthodox Albanians. So this is an interesting topic, because obviously the mainstream theory is that they were Orthodox since the Middle Ages, and that was the original religion. And obviously, this may well be the case, depending on how we look at the new timeline in a minute. But at any rate, the point I'm trying to make here is that the Orthodox faith is what distanced the Arvanites from the Albanians, and what created enmity between them, and what led them to identify as Greeks later on. And that's so hence the new Greco-Arvanite identity. There's another aspect to this as well, which I'll have to touch upon. I don't know, I think I'll do that in a minute as well, because yeah. So then we get to the Greek Revolution. So this is another very tough subject, because there, basically, there, as I said, there were several attempts, several revolts organized by the Greeks against the Ottomans. And there's a lot of debate about what actually made those happen, what actually caused the revolution to happen, and why it succeeded in the end. So some historical context. We'll get to the major players in a moment, because I have some slides prepared for those. Obviously, part of it was probably the tax that Christians had to pay. Things like that. But there were some other things as well, and this is where Ali Pasha comes in. Ali Pasha was a big issue at the time in the Ottoman era, because he was a pasha that was gathering more power than the other pashas, and then the Sultan actually liked. So they actually wanted to get him out of the way. And the funny thing is that many of the Greek heroes of the Greek Revolution were actually under his employ. They were all mercenaries working for Ali Pasha. And there are theories that claim that either by accident or maybe even on purpose, Ali Pasha was the reason that the Greek Revolution even happened, because he basically had conspired with his Greek subjects to, I don't know what the plan was. I think he, to overthrow the Sultan or something. I think his plan was to basically create, the theory is that it is some theorize that his plan was to create like a greater Albanian homeland, because Ali Pasha was Albanian as well, obviously. Ali Pasha Tepelena was his name. So anyway, we'll talk about, we have the Sulyots, as I mentioned earlier. Those were the Epirat Akrites, let's say. We had other of those pharaohs as well, the Himariotes, how do you say it? The Idrei from Hydra, the island of Hydra. Those were like seafaring Albanians. We have the Magnates are different. They say they're of a different stock, not Albanian, but they're definitely important in this whole story. And so on. We have different tribes that all have their, that all did their part, let's say, in the battle. I think I jumped a thing here. Okay, so this is very revealing, right? So the whole thing is the other part of the Greek Revolution, right? So one part was Ali Pasha. Ali Pasha basically ignited the flame, let's say. The other part is the Filikiateria, and that connects to the Fanariotes and to Kapodistrias, who will enter the game later on, and to Freemasonry. So the Filikiateria was an organization that was founded in Russia, and I think the first director, let's say, was Kapodistrias, but I think that changed later on. He didn't stay long because he was busy with other things. But the point is that this organization was basically created to combat Islam in Europe and to basically destroy the Ottoman Empire. And that, I think that was the actual stated purpose of the Filikiateria, rather than what they claim it is. But the whole organization of it was a pseudo-Masonic structure, let's say. So I could probably show some pictures as well. But basically, they had these initiations. You had to take some oaths. And then you had these stages that you could climb in, and you could gain access to additional information, let's say. So it was basically a secret organization, as well as an intelligence operation in Greece. And they were secretly contacting military people and intellectuals and the priesthood and things like that, and initiating them into their ranks, and basically fermenting a sentiment of Greek nationalism and things like that. So my theory is that there is a connection here with the Jesuits, and obviously with Freemasonry, because they use similar rites. So, and those were obviously, as I said, set up by the Fanariots, and there's a lot of connections there that I'll get back to later on. So then there's another aspect. We have the Philhellenes, and those are foreigners, be they Franks or Brits or Germans or whatever, that sympathize with the Greek cause and come to assist Greece and send money and write poetry and make paintings and propagandize about the Greek cause, both in Greece and abroad. And those were also a problem, because they had a how do you say? They had a misconception of Greece. Most of them came to Greece and were surprised to find that there were no people actually speaking Greek. Most people were speaking an Albanian dialect. And obviously, many of them came to kind of accept that, or came to or started to play with those concepts. So one of those, the most famous, is obviously Lord Byron. I'm not sure, I should have mentioned him. I forgot to put him in the list. But yeah, Lord Byron was a famous Philhellene. And he was pretty interesting because he also because he did refer to the Albanians that he was hanging out with as Albanians. He wasn't pretending they were anything they weren't, but at the same time he was trying to promote this Greek ideal that everyone was looking for, this big romantic ancient Greek civilization that no longer existed. And so he played a pivotal role in creating the new Greek identity, let's say. So we have the Magnates. I mentioned those before. So the thing about those is they are situated like in the southwesternmost tip of the Peloponnese, in Mani, and they're pirates. They claim to be descended from the Spartans, but there are theories that they descend from the Cretans as well. I think there may have been an admixture as well. But they're absolute lunatics. So nobody in the Greek Revolution liked them. Because they were absolute madmen. They could kill you for the slightest of reasons. They were pirates. Nobody liked them. They lived in their towns had towers, so they had individual towers for each family. So each family lived in a tower. That's pretty badass. So yeah, the Magnates are pretty interesting, but there's theories that claim they're probably Arvanites as well, but from an older stock, from an older migration, let's say. But I don't know. And they say the same about the Cretans as well. So it's a bit of a thing. And I mean, they had the same dress and stuff as well. But I mean, they could have been Janissaries as well. So it's a bit of a... Then we have Kapodistrias. So Kapodistrias is an interesting figure as well, because he was a Russian. They say he was of Arvanite descent. Now, there could be some truth to that, I'm not sure, but he was a statesman, and he had made his career in both Russia as a what was it, as a I think it was as a minister of foreign affairs or something like that, and in Switzerland. So Kapodistrias is considered like a national hero in Switzerland because he wrote the Swiss Constitution, or he helped write it. So they even have a statue of him in Central Park in I think it was, where was it, in Geneva or something? I'm not sure. I don't remember. But in any case, he became the first statesman after the first half of the revolution succeeded, basically, and we set up our first parliament in the Peloponnese, in Nafplio. As I said, Nafplio was a big Arvanite city. So in the first parliament, they spoke Arvanitica. They didn't speak Greek. And Kapodistrias was the head of state at the time. He was assassinated by the Magnates, and so on and so on. Big story, or maybe he was even killed by an Arvanite. I'm not even sure. He might actually have been killed by an Arvanite, but whatever. There were a lot of tensions at the time as well. And then after the revolution spread further north, the capital city of Greece was moved to Athens, and that's when the Hellenization of Greece started as well. All right. So we have some major players here. We can look at some faces if you'd like. We have Ali Pasha Tepelena. This is a very nice picture, I think. A very interesting. So this guy, yeah, I think he was a lot smarter than people are letting on, and I think he was definitely, personally, I think he was definitely the powder keg, let's say, that ignited the revolution in Greece. And then we have a number of our famous heroes. We have Marcos Botzaris. He's probably the greatest of them all, considered to be, and like his family is still considered to be one of the most prestigious Arvanite families in Greece. His daughter also became like a courtier of the Greek royal family, and things like that. So they were very prestigious after his death, obviously. Theodoros Kolokotronis is another important one. His real name is Bithigouris. So Bithigouris just means the same thing as Kolokotronis in Greek, but in Arvanitica, Bithigouri means basically. So Kolokotronis basically means like a stone, like an ass of stone, you could say, or an ass of stone. And like my grandfather used to tell the story that like during like one of the fights he was in, like one of the battles he was in, he got shot in the butt cheek. So after it was done, he sat down on a rock to stop the bleeding. that's where he got the name. So he was literally a hard ass. So make of that what you will. So yeah, we got figures like that. We've got Karaiskakis. We've got Canaris. Miaoulis was an Arvanite as well. I think he was from Hydra. We have Bubulina. That's also very famous. And so on. Madonna Mavrogenus was also interesting. She didn't actually fight, but she financed the revolutionaries. And meanwhile, most of these heroes' lives ended in tragedy as well. So Kolokotronis, so Botzaris got killed. There's a nice anecdote as well, because he was fighting Albanians, and when they killed him, he said like something along the lines of "Why are you killing me?" in Albanian. So someone heard him, like the leader of the enemy tribe, and he called like an end to arms, because he realized that they were speaking the same language. So from that anecdote, we also learn that they didn't even know that their enemies were of the same people. And that's another trick that they were playing in Greece. Both the Turks and the Greeks were doing it, because if you went into the army, you had to learn Greek. So only the men spoke Greek in Greece, among the Arvanites at least. And when you were in the army, you got your orders in Greek. You didn't even know if the soldier next to you spoke Albanian or anything. Most of the time, if you were new or whatever. So and the Turks did the same thing. So the Turkish soldiers, they had to learn Turkish and speak Turkish in the army. So they didn't even have the chance to recognize who's who. That's a big aspect of it, and that's what we get from this story. Kolokotronis was imprisoned for treason, allegedly. There's other stories as well. I think it was Karaiskakis, I think, was killed as well. Yeah, Karaiskakis was killed. Madonna Mavrogenus was how do you say? She lost all her wealth and just basically lived as she basically died penniless and things like that. So they weren't treated well either after the revolution by the Greek state. And that's a big subject of debate as well. But anyway. See, I did mention Byron. I did actually think about it, but I hadn't remembered. So yeah, there's another thing as well. We have the Orlov Revolt. That's so that was before the revolution even started. We had one of the revolts that took place was the Orlov Revolt, which took place in 1770, which is also a pretty auspicious year, you could say. And that was organized by the Russians. Wait, let me see if I can find it. Revolts. Alexei Orlov. So the Russian admiral Alexei Orlov. I don't know exactly how it happened, but the point was that the Russians made an attempt to basically consolidate their power in the Balkans, based on the Orthodox Christian faith, and they went to war with Turkey. I'm not sure if it was a yeah, no, it was part of the Russo-Turkish war, so that was a thing as well. So in that attempt, they accidentally staged like a first version, let's say, or a first attempt at a Greek revolt, let's say. Now, that also ended in tragedy, but I think there's more to that story as well. I think the Phanariots were definitely involved, but yeah, we can only speculate at this point. There are some. I mean, you can look it up on Wikipedia. I'm not entirely clear on the entire story. It's pretty complicated, but yeah, whatever. So anyway, we have the foreign powers that are playing a big role in trying to train the Greek armies. And things like that. They also make a big mess of things because they try to go to war like in a European fashion with like infantry and like going head to head, while the Arvanites are basically like rangers. They sit in the mountains. They set traps, and they basically fight a guerrilla war. So they had a different fighting style, and they were obviously in the minority usually, or they were usually outnumbered. That's what I'm trying to say. So yeah, okay, I've repeated all these. I think we can skip this. So we have Kapodistrias. He becomes the first head of state. He mints the first Greek coin. So that's also interesting because it's the phoenix, right? We have the phoenix here, and we have the cross, and then we have the Star of David on top, and we have this weird inscription here, which is unknown what it exactly means. So Alka, I don't know what that means. I think it's like something like Alpha and Omega, and then Ka. I don't know what that means. I think so. Ka is the soul in Demotic
yeah, part of the Egyptian like 3-part soul. Yeah,
exactly. So that might be it. And then we have, but it's such a weird coin, man. It writes Phoenix on the back, just
Where on the coin does it say New World Order?
It doesn't, but it does say.
It kind of just like in like ensemble is about that. Like look at the laurel wreath and the way that the laurel wreath is kind of the omega in verse, right? And then you have the phi is the first letter. Like there's a lot going on with like.
I also wanted to point out this little detail here. See that?
Wow. Not only is it an infinity or a Santa Cruz S, it's also kind of like that weird little what's that thing, that Elon Musk has? That little Tibetan thing.
Yeah, the Vajra, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I figured too. Exactly. Yeah. There you go.
Kind of thing, yeah.
Isn't that crazy? Why is that on there? What the hell? All right, so yeah. But yeah, so the thing is, like Kapodistrias, as I said, right? He worked in Russia. He was a statesman in Russia. There was, he had crazy power, actually, if you think about it. And he wrote the Swiss Constitution. Like this guy, he must have been like a hardcore Freemason with
yeah, and it's interesting. Like the Swiss Constitution is like Confederate and really like based. It's like a good I like that Constitution. I remember like being fond of that Constitution. It's too bad they got rid of it. But yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. So and then after he died, we got our first king and queen. Now they're pretty interesting too of their own. I don't remember the family name. Let me just check. Otto of Greece. Otto Friedrich Ludwig von Wittelsbach. That was his name, and his wife was Queen Amalia. At any rate, I think she was from a different. Where what's her name again? Queen Amalia of Greece. Of Oldenburg. Okay, so now they're an interesting bunch as well, because they were young. I think they got Greece as like among the royals. They were like, okay, we'll pull like sticks or whatever to see who gets Greece. And they got the shortest stick or whatever, and they got saddled up with Greece, and they were like, God damn it. Well, at the same time, okay, to be fair, Otto loved Greece, so he was a classicist, so he really wanted to. He really liked the idea. So when he came to Greece, he was actually surprised to find out, like so many others, that there were no Greeks. They were all speaking Albanian. And he was like, what the hell is going on? Who are these people? That's literally how that's all described. And then he was like at the funeral of Marcos Botsaris. And he was like, so there was something going on there, and the priest was talking to him in Albania or something, and he was like, there was a misunderstanding or whatever, and the priest was like, oh, how our own king doesn't even know about the glory of the Arvanites and things like that. So they were kind of oh yeah, that's true, they're posing in the ruins, yeah, exactly. So that was kind of a weird episode, but the thing is, what I find interesting about these two is that they actually came to like the Arvanites. They actually came to like the local population, and as you can see, they started dressing like them. King Otto started wearing the fustanella, and Queen Amalia even created her own outfit based on the Greek fustanella, but for women. So, and we still have it today. We call it the Amalia costume, Amalia dress. And it's actually very pretty. As you can see, she has a similar vest as the men would have, with the kind of like the corset, like silhouette. But then with the European dress underneath, it's very tasteful, I think. And the fez, I think it's a very, very cute touch. And there's another one, like Marcos Botsaris' daughter has a very famous portrait. And she wears a dress like that as well. Let's see if I can find it, but I'll have to change the screen for a second there to show you the image. Wait.
Do you know, Manifestopheles, to what extent like those individuals were involved in already reinvigorating what we would now consider to be classical Greek culture or Hellenism or something? Or can you
who now?
That? Well, those you just showed, basically, or whoever's posing in the ruins, and because you said they are classicist. And I was like, what does that mean?
Yeah. Well, I think they definitely played a role in trying to promote that to some degree, but we weren't that far. This is still in the 1830s or so. So this is very, very early. That's just fresh off the revolution.
Just because of course it would make sense they put somebody there who is so interested and maybe strangely knows things about the classical period that no locals know, right? So just in terms of how you set it up earlier with the Freemason and all of that, would just make sense that I put someone on top who's of course going to teach them the new history, basically.
Yeah, but that's not. I don't think that's what King Otto did. He was because he was pretty naive. There's no indication in the Greek, like in the history that we have, which I think in that regard we can safely assume that it is true, because it's pretty recent, and it's it describes him fairly objectively, because he was both liked and disliked by the people. There were aspects of and parts of the population that disliked him, and others that liked him a lot. And but at the same time, for example, Queen Amalia was very much beloved by everyone in Greece. And still today we have like the Queen's Garden, and right next to the parliamentary building in Athens, which is very nice. It's still very, very well preserved.
So just in terms of history, I mean, also here they talk about, the beautiful history of the Austrian royal family, and technically their descendants would still be running around. I have never seen them do anything useful, actually, especially the Habsburgs were involved in the pan-Europa movement and all of that, and many very strange things. but still now, they play Sound of Music or whatever, and everyone is like, oh my God, Sisi, this and that. So I just want to say, because now they're telling everyone that they were beloved, that doesn't necessarily mean
No, I
there's
think
too much credence.
yeah,
of
okay,
maybe there is, but maybe
yeah.
Someone who still knew. Well, this is too long ago. Probably this is the same issue we all have.
It's exactly.
pointing that
No,
out,
but
yeah.
I think in this case, because they're at the same time, because Greece never had a good relation with its royalty either. And I think I'm not even sure if there's any other country that has done this other than France, maybe. But France is an extreme example. But we've had two royal houses, and we've expelled both of them. We just at some point, and I'll get to that story in a minute as well. But we expelled these guys who never did anything wrong. They were just there. They were actually trying to understand the people and come to terms with them, and actually, they were actually trying to recognize them for who they are. And, I think they were actually trying to do some good. But there were tensions regardless, and they were expelled for basically unknown reasons. Because the thing is, for example, right, Kolokotronis was put in prison for treason, allegedly, because he allegedly spoke against the king and queen or whatever. But the thing is, he got pardoned by them, by the royal family themselves, and there's a lot of things like that as well. So I think there were other factions that were steering the public sentiment in the background and trying to turn them against them, because I think what happened was they saw that they were actually taking a liking to the Arvanite population and imitating them, rather than imposing that classical Hellenic civilization. So, and I think that's the reason why they actually got expelled. So yeah, let me actually. Can you turn on the screen? I shared the screen for that picture. Yeah, so that's Marcos Botzaris' daughter. So she was a courtier in King Otto's court, and she's an interesting case as well, because they say they took her with them everywhere they went, but they say that she pretended not to speak German, and she hated the Germans and stuff. So and she would always spread gossip about the royal family and stuff, and cause trouble for them. So she's a real trickster. There's some weird things going on with her, and she ended up marrying a Fenariot as well. And
what is she wearing on her head?
A fez, yeah. So she's basically depicted wearing this Amalia dress, as I mentioned, and she's wearing a fez on her head. So yeah, the Greek custom, or the Arvanite custom, was usually to wear them sideways, and usually they had these soft fezzes. They didn't have the hard ones, but you could also encounter the hard one.
And to what extent have you ever investigated because I really only now kind of realized this, why does the fez, at least with this red color, and the Phrygian cap, from the French Revolution or whatever, seem so similar? The one maybe is just a bit more square or something, but especially with this type of form, it's already a bit more soft or malleable material. It could almost look like a Phrygian cap. So I have no clue what to do with that, but just noticing that.
Well, I have my theories about that, and I've included a slide towards the end of my presentation as well. So I don't know if we're waiting for Xirtus to return, or otherwise I can just go back.
I think you can go on if you like.
I'm here. Yeah, what's up?
Okay, all right, excellent. Let me just change the screen again. Oh wait, why do I stop it? I thought I could just. Oh no, okay, I have to stop it.
It's all right. You can just select the window.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I usually do. All right, there you go. Okay, so yeah, so far you did catch about the expulsion of the royal family, Andreas?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Excellent. All right. Okay. So now next we get the second phase, let's say, which coincides with the second royal family that we get, which are the Glücksburgs. And we get the Megali Idea. So this is a big thing. this is right about the First Balkan War and World War I and all this big catastrophe that came over the Balkans. And this is all due to this thing, the Megali Idea. Megali Idea means the greater, it's basically the greater Greece. So there's this big idea, this idea that Greece should include all of Anatolia, big part of, ideally big part of
Greater Israel.
Yeah, maybe, probably, yeah, of Egypt, as well as maybe a part of Italy, you know, because Calabria and Sicily are alleged to be Greek, and things like that. And so we get our second king, Constantine I, of the Glücksburgs, and we actually, like, we put him through the ringer, dude. Like, this guy, he couldn't catch a break. Like, they demanded, like the Greeks demanded of their king to conquer Constantinople. So they went and they conquered Constantinople, but then they wanted to go further. So they went into Asia Minor as well, and that's basically where the Turks defeated them. In the meantime, there was this whole thing going on there with like French, German, English agents and things like that. So it was an absolute disaster. Both the First Balkan War and World War I in
just to mention, this
Anatolia.
1897 date at least reminds me of the fall of, I want to say, well, the fall of Tartar City, to put it properly.
Okay, yeah.
This is a similar dating. If the dating is correct, this maybe is a correlation of some kind of a push that occurred, just as it did seemingly around 1850. I mean, probably every day during that time, but these are the markers we get.
Yeah, that might be possible. Yeah. So yeah, we get World War I. So the thing is, like, after we lost Anatolia, we also lost Constantinople, and that's where basically Constantine I, King of Greece, was declared a traitor. They put him in prison. They had planned for him to be executed, and after a while, they decided to exile him instead. And his son became the King of Britain, right? Who died like a few years ago. Was it a few years ago or last year? I don't remember.
Oh man, I can't help it. 1897 apparently is also the year of the first LGBTQ trans pride organization in the world, founded in Berlin, the Scientific Humanitarian Committee.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty funny.
Yeah, obscure fact. That was
der Zwischenstufen. Jahrbuch der Zwischenstufen. Okay. So now we have another interesting phenomenon in this era, in the early 20th century, which is the Treaty of Versailles. So the Treaty of Versailles basically declared that there should be a population exchange, and specifically in Greece, that was between Greek Muslims and Turkish Christians. So the Turks had to send their Christian populations to Greece, and Greece had to send their Muslim populations to Turkey. Now this was another catastrophe, because that meant that Greece suddenly had an influx of millions of people that they didn't know what to do with, and this meant that they had, but they actually, they used this in their advantage, because they took the opportunity to change a bunch of toponyms. Change like village names from Albanian to Greek, change people's names as well. So they started demanding people adopt a surname, a family name, things like that. And so all the Arvanite tribes and stuff started changing their names and stuff. And a lot of them, I think, were also scared of expulsion. Because there might be a connection there. There might be a reputation of them being Muslim or whatever. And I think there was a real fear of that happening. But the funny thing is, there was one tribe that was exempt from this population exchange in Greece at the time, and those were the Chams. And the Chams were a Muslim population in Greece, in the north of Epirus, in Thesprotia, And they were wealthy landowners since Ottoman times, and they were doing well for themselves. There was nothing wrong with them, but somehow, well, I guess they had good lawyers or whatever, but somehow they made it happen that the League of Nations made an exception for the Chams, and they didn't have to move to Turkey, which is also interesting. Why didn't they want to move? I mean, if they're Turkish Albanians, as the Greeks claim they were, there's a lot of weird things there as well. So after that, we get another phenomenon in Greece, which is called diglossia, and diglossia basically means diglossia is a how do you say? It's a well-known scientific term. It's used to describe this phenomenon where a country is going through language reform. Oh wow!
Just want to point that out, so maybe I wasn't that off with Greater Israel.
Hey,
Yeah.
did anyone else notice the synchronicity of Basil? Basil from the
Yeah,
Albanian stories.
Yes.
Okay.
Basil from sorry.
So earlier you were talking about the what do they call the Erica? What's it called? The Acritas.
Yeah, the Acritas. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So the main mythology of the Akrita is about this hero Basil, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So kind of
Well,
just random. But.
Yeah, that's funny because Basil that comes from Vasilevs. That means the king. So, and it's also a given name here. So Vasilis, it's a name that we have in Greece, and like Vasily in Russian as well, and other languages that or other Orthodox cultures. But there's definitely a connection with Basil and Baal there. Absolutely, it's no coincidence that Basil is called Baal in French, for example.
Right. But also like a vassal, maybe a vassal and Vasily is somehow weirdly connected.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting thought there. So the roles are reversed. That also happens a lot in languages, and it happens with Albanian as well. Well, maybe that's going very deep into the language and stuff. So maybe that's for another time. So the phenomenon of diglossia is basically when you have, and it's very, very funny that they call it that, because diglossia is like digenis, right? Like we mentioned earlier, it's two languages. Diglossia is two tongues. And so what happened basically here in Greece is they started debating on how the Greek language should be reformed, how it should be, let's say, but nobody asked the Arvanites. This is suddenly it comes on top, and there's just a bunch of intellectuals that are speculating, and so you have two schools of thought, right? You have the Demotic school of thought, and the purists, let's say, the Katharevousa. So the basically the Katharevousa or the purists, they try to recreate Greek as it was in ancient times, but at the same time they still use the modern pronunciation that we inherited from the Byzantines. But so they invented, for example, the diacritic system that we have in that you see in ancient Greek. If you learn ancient Greek at university now, you will see all these weird diacritics, right? I don't remember all the names, but the little wavy thing, and the one that goes this way, and the one that goes that way in Greek.
Right.
If you if you learn ancient Greek, if you
I had the opportunity and I gladly passed, but yes, they have all kinds of diacritics. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So those were invented in this time. I mean, there are some diacritics you can find on old epigrams and stuff like that, but those are very limited. And they're only there to you have the one for the H sound, for example. You sometimes have the circumflex, the weird one, things like that. But usually it's all in capitals anyway. So almost nothing is accentuated in any way, let's say. But then in order to somehow recreate the nuances of ancient Greek pronunciation as they saw it. They invented these weird diacritics to start to create like a so-called melodicity in the language and stuff. But the funny thing about Katharevousa was that it just sounded pompous. It just sounded overly convoluted, and just sounded like trying to be interesting for the sake of it, giving putting on airs and being like a pseudo intellectual. Meanwhile, the Demotic language was closer to what we'd call a natural language. They were looking at how do people speak, and what can we do with it. My theory is that Demotic evolved from Arvanitica, but that
Just briefly, this kind of reminds me of Royal English. How do you call it? Buckingham Palace English or whatever, and Yorkshire English.
Yeah.
No. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, it's a similar phenomenon, and it's the thing is, like, I have a bunch of, because like the apartment I live in is like, it belonged to a teacher or something, a philologist, and he has like a number of books about, and it's funny because the organization that published those, and then it was like a magazine, was called the Nea Filikieteria, so the new friendly company. That's what that actually means, or the friendly brotherhood, let's say. And they were literally saying, like, just we're in the same process as the Swiss or the Belgians were when they were trying to decide for their national language and things like that. And the Belgians and the Swiss literally had the diglossia, they literally had that problem. So, but the thing is, like, they named it that. It seems like they named it that to give the impression that they're, the two languages we're actually talking about is Demotic and Katharevousa. Meanwhile, the two languages that were actually fighting for survival, let's say, was Arvanitica and Greek. But nobody talks about that because nobody believes that Arvanitica is even a language that is being spoken. So yeah, but so in the end, the Demotic language, how do you say? The Demotic language became the official language of Greek, but it obviously was revised a bit. It included some elements of the Katharevousa, so it took measures for Greeks to be able to also use ancient Greek vocabulary in their language. So it is an effective system that we have. To be fair, it is functional. It feels relatively natural. So they did what they could with what they had, let's say. But at the same time, I get the suspicion that there was like a Hegelian dialectic going on here. That they created a new problem, and then created a thesis and an antithesis, and then synthesized basically the new language that was supposed to take the lead from there on. So yeah, that was that. And then we have World War II, and now it gets a bit even more murky. Basically, in World War II, we deal with the consequences of World War I in part, but at the same time, we also deal with foreign invasion. We have the Italian occupation. We fought the Italians in Albania in the mountains. So that was all, all fine and dandy. We actually beat the Italians, and then they called in the help of the Germans, and they occupied the country for a few years. Allegedly, the Greeks were instrumental in delaying the Germans, making it so that they would go to Russia in the winter, which is a bullshit story, but whatever. But there's a number of things that happen in the background that here in Greece and in Albania are very, very, very controversial. And if you're not careful, you might get wasted in Greece. But the thing is, we have the champs. Remember, in World War I, they escaped the population exchange of the Treaty of Versailles. They were still in the area. So allegedly, the champs collaborated with the Nazis. And we're fighting the resistance groups, allegedly. And allegedly, they went into Paramithia and started killing people. and there was like this whole thing and stuff. And then there is this guy, Napoleon Zervas. I think I'll show a picture because he's a pretty funny guy. Napoleon Zervas. And so, like, he's a very, very popular figure of, how do you say, anti-Albanian propaganda, let's say, here in Greece. Like this whole thing, this story is so vicious that, you know, it's one of the things that
Just Napoleon is kind of a very suspicious name to me by now, I have to say.
I know, right? I know, exactly.
I'm
And
curious
I
to
don't
hear
think,
the story now, what happened, how
I don't think
fantastical it
it's,
is.
yeah. So this is the guy. So as you can see, he's a very, very friendly guy. Well, he took on some pounds later on in his years, as you can see.
Well, because he ate
Here he is
somebody.
with his, yeah. Okay, so this is actually funny that you mentioned that, because there are mentions of cannibalism.
Oh my God.
In this scenario, in a court. So people have literally been accusing the Chams of eating people. So the Chams, as I said, they
Wow.
were a Muslim group. But there's the other side of the story, and that is that the Greek government used an accusation of Nazi collaboration as an excuse to exterminate the Chams and to cleanse Greece of its most powerful Muslim Albanian population. The funny thing is that the Sulyots, for example, who are these famous heroes that fought in the Greek Revolution and things like that, they were also Chams. And they're also Christian Chams, of course. So it's not like, you know, but that's stuff, you know, that's all very murky waters. And obviously they were all related to each other. I mean, they had families, you had families that were both Christian and Muslim, and that's very common practice in Albania. Actually, I should have mentioned that in the beginning when I was talking about religion. You know, Albanians have a very liberal mindset by nature, it seems, about religion. So you can have a family where one is Muslim and the other is Christian within the same nest, let's say, but they have their own traditions that they follow that supersedes their religious convictions, let's say. And I think the same goes for the Arvanites, especially earlier on when they were illiterate. They didn't understand what the priest was saying anyway. You know, so yeah. So they exterminated the Chams. Either way you put it, you know, whether this was a you know, whether this was a Cham genocide or a Greek genocide is debatable, but I think you know, it was a nasty story regardless. The Chams claimed they were, you know, they were patriots. They were even fighting on the rebel side and things like that. So it's a very strange situation. And obviously the Albanians are pushing very hard still to get some kind of admission from Greece about what happened in Chamuya. That's what the region is called. So let me get back to the slideshow. All right. So after World War II, the Germans left on their own. We didn't expel them or anything. Then we had the Greek Civil War. There was a war between the communists and the nationalists, and that basically was the last step to establish the Greek government, let's say, as it stands today. And then, I don't know why I put. And then we did have measures to eradicate the Arvanite language in its various dialects and in the various regions it was spoken. But the methods differed from region to region. Sorry?
Yes, just to double check with this story, because David Ewing Jr. shared with me at least once in regarding to, I think, Gaelic, that here, now for a few decades, they started promoting the original language, but they're using dictionaries from early 1900s. So I'm curious, in the case with Arvanite, is there no state interest in it at all whatsoever, or clear that they only deliberately try to hide it? Or are there any movements now at all, except you writing poetry, that anyone cares about it? Any ministry, cultural section, or anybody? Or what's the situation there? Because that's always interesting.
It's literally, You're that's a good question, because it's the government. There's literally zero interest in Arvanitica. There's no there's no official support to preserve the language in Greece. And this is, the United Nations have pushed Greece to try to, get this issue resolved, because it's a dying language, a dying minority language that needs to be preserved. According to the human rights legislature. But Greece has yet to take any steps to do something about it. Obviously, there are some organizations, or there have been some organizations that have been, that have tried to revive the language. There still are, by the way, but it depends. There's different degrees, let's say, of engagement, let's say. So there are a number of cultural organizations, Arvanite organizations. So, for example, here in Athens, we have a region that's called a district called Lyosia. The original name is Lyosia. It's named after a Arvanite officer, military officer. I don't remember what his rank was, like a general or something, whose name was Lyosis. And his clan got this area of Athens as a reward for their work and stuff. And they're one of the recognized clans that are accepted for, and are kind of allowed to have their own space and things. And they have their own organizations which promotes Arvanite culture. But the Arvanite culture they promote is mostly limited to dances, music, food, things like that. Language lessons are hard to come by here in Greece, unfortunately. So the best you can do is to find a village or find a native speaker and hope they can teach you. Most of them don't even write. Originally, they didn't even have a script. So there's a lot of problems there. There are some books that I've managed to obtain. So if you'd like, I can show those if you want. So for example, this one. Wait, here's the camera. I've had to actually do I've had to do like a Mission Impossible type shit to actually get this book, because it's self-published by the writer, and the writer died in, what was it, 2013, I think. He passed away.
So not a lot of interest in getting this information to other people. It's kind of depressed even.
Exactly. And the website had closed, so I had to use the Wayback Machine to get the website to find the contact info of his daughter.
Wow.
To get the book. And I actually made it happen. But yeah, it's
maybe get in contact and see if we can get her the digital file of it, because we could translate it to English for her or something.
Exactly. Yeah, I've actually asked her if she, because what she could do, because the writer has stated that this is the grammar book. It's interesting. It's pretty basic. I mean, it's pretty confusing too, because he uses, everyone uses his own script as well. So it's a mess. But regardless, it's still pretty useful. But the thing is, he states that he also has a vocabulary, a dictionary, as well as another book with stories or something. So I sent her an email asking if she had any interest to publish those, and I pointed her in the direction of lulu.com, so she can just self-publish. She can upload the PDFs, have it printed on demand. Yeah, but I don't think anything has come from that. But if I might actually ask her if she wants me to edit the manuscripts and maybe upload them myself. and just make them available on Lulu or something, as well as this book, because it's pretty important to have. But the thing is, like, there are suspicions. Okay, there's another writer. Wait, so this one here, he's pretty controversial too, and the Arvanites are pretty split about him.
I like that cover. That'd be a cool T-shirt.
I know, right? Yeah, it's I'm pretty happy with this. I had to get this secondhand too. It's out of print. But so the name, his name is Aristides Kollias, or the Albanians call him Aristide Kolja. But and he wrote this book about, and so his theory is that the Arvanites are the direct descendants from the Pelasgians, and that they are the real ancient Greeks, and that basically Greeks are just civilized Albanians. So once they get down from the mountains and start living in the cities, they naturally start speaking Greek. I mean, not exactly, but the environment basically is already Greek, so they integrate, and they integrate naturally because they've always done that. And I'll get to that in a minute as well, because that's one of the interesting phenomena that I'm referring to with the Pelasgians, so with the stork. So that's literally what I'm getting to now. So if you'd if you can open the slideshow again. Thank you. So modern day Albania and Greece. The whole thing is that it seems to be that there's a symbiotic relationship between Albania and Greece, and there seems to be an instinct in Albanians after a certain a number of generations, or I don't know if it has to do with the populations they have or whatever. At some point, they inevitably migrate into Greece, and not only that, they integrate as well. Because the thing is, like, when communism fell, for example, in Albania in the 80s, and the borders opened and the Albanians started storming into Greece, becoming basically economic migrants, they started noticing that the Greeks were, like, first of all, they were the first foreigners the Greeks ever saw, right? So despite the fact that they look basically the same, they have the same features as the Greeks. They generally, they're generally white people, but usually they have darker hair, same kind of eyes, and same kind of facial features, cheekbones, etc. The physiognomy is almost identical. There are some, how do you say, types that are a bit different, and those are usually the ones that are brought up by the Greeks as being like indications of Albanian, like, I don't know, how do you say, what's the word again?
Natives,
Albanian genetics, yeah, I guess, things like that. But that's all nonsense anyway. But when they realized that they look the same, and all they needed to do was first learn the language well, and then change their names to Greek, just translate their name, they could make a lot more money that way. So a lot of Albanians did that, and that's how it's always been since antiquity, So that's the whole migratory thing that I'm talking about, and they sometimes also go back depending on the, on their financial status or whatever. But a lot of them stay in Greece, and Greece depends on that because we replenish our populations from the Albanians. So that's the secret. But obviously you can't tell them that, because if you do, suddenly everyone will start speaking Albanian again, I think.
It's a hard situation.
Sorry?
It's a hard situation.
Yeah, it's definitely a hard situation. But let's take Albanian history. We're almost done, by the way. I think these are the last 3 or 4 slides at most. So the start of Albanian nationalism starts in 1912, if I'm not mistaken. Albania starts vying for its own independence. There's a bunch of debates going on. It goes through its own language reform and things like that. But the funny thing is, like, in that time, still, that was before the Treaty of Versailles. Still, by the way, there were Arvanites of Greece. There were Greek Arvanite, how do you say, organizations that were promoting the idea that Albania should unite with Greece and that they're brothers and that they speak the same language, and that and so on and so on and so forth. And the genetics attest to that, by the way. We'll get to that too. But this obviously never happened, and there's other reasons for that. I think part of it is because Albania has a lot of Muslims.
Now, this is interesting. This is what year
yeah.
you say?
Sorry?
In what year is this? 1912?
Yeah, around 1912 was when the Albanian state was founded.
Because at least in official history, maybe you're aware that after the First World War, as it is portrayed, many individuals in Austria actually wanted to join together with Germany and create Deutsch Österreich. And in this case, supposedly they would have spoken exactly the same language, German, but also then, I don't know who came up with whatever reason, and then, Austria officially turned Austro-fascistic to, further galvanize their nationality, which, I mean, at least language-wise, between German and Austrian, I mean, good luck. I mean, but yeah.
Well, I mean, something similar definitely did happen here as well. And the thing is, like, the Albanian national identity, there are many indications that show that it was fabricated by the Austro-Hungarian Empire as well as the Italians. The Italians had been at it for much longer. So they had set the foundations, let's say, since Roman times, allegedly, but at least since early modern times, because they had very tight relations with Albanians, especially with the Albanian mercenaries and things like that. And Albanian-Italian relations to this day are very, very good, let's say. So just the other day, like the day before yesterday, I think, you had a big match between Albania and Italy in the Euro Championship, if I'm not mistaken. And they're posting all these videos where they're all getting along and having fun and breaking spaghetti and stuff like that. And
there's a crazy movie called Tune In Tomorrow with Keanu Reeves and Peter Falk. I don't know if you've ever seen this movie. It's like about like a guy who like travels from town to town, like typing radio shows, and then the town will burn down his building and he'll have to leave to the next town and he'll do another radio show back in like the 40s or something like that. But the whole thing is like super anti-Albanian for some reason.
Interesting.
Yeah, like there's like every single scene, like everything he writes is like,
this firm has a strict policy of not employing Albanians.
Like things like that.
Interesting. Yeah.
And then he'll be like, like constantly. The next one was like, hold on.
Yeah. They're the people who are the cream coat and broad.
Are you gentlemen by any chance of Albanian ancestry? If you don't mind my asking.
Like it's like a whole thing, like what's up with the Albanians, and like eventually he finds out like the mayor's wife's part Albanian in this town. He's like, why are you picking on the Albanians? He's like, well, why not? You got to pick on somebody.
All right, interesting. Yeah.
But I always wondered, like, because like that was like my first interaction with the Albanians was like, what is the deal?
Well, the Greeks went through a similar thing too in America and stuff. The Greek migrants, and
right,
and in Australia. Yeah, and Albania. Yeah, and I mean, Albanians have the same kind of reputation abroad as well. I mean, there's a lot of, I think obviously they have to do stuff like, like illegal stuff to survive. Obviously, there's, they tend to be pretty poor. At the same time, though, they're pretty hard workers as well. And there's like kind of a dichotomy, but there's people that go abroad to study and they send money back home and things like that. And you do notice that Albania is actually improving financially recently, because of all that effort that they have been putting into it. So, it is commendable regardless.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's bad eggs everywhere.
I don't really think there's anything. I think the whole point of that movie is like he just picks on Albanians for no reason, or rather, like there's nothing wrong with Albanians, but he just wants to like cause
Yeah,
civil
he
unrest.
just wants to have a scapegoat in his
Yeah,
town or whatever.
exactly.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah.
like I feel like there's some metaphor there too historically,
Yeah, I think
because
so
the
too.
Albanians have been the scapegoat for several issues that we've mentioned so far
Yeah,
today.
exactly. Yeah. So let's see. So we have the House of Zog. That's also an interesting. It's a little side note because Zog means bird. The Arvanite language, or the Albanian language, if you will, in general, was how do you say, was called by the Arvanites themselves Yuga Zogut, which means the language of the birds. So the House of Zog kind of seems to have adopted that, because that wasn't their natural name. They changed their name, but they were originally they were Ottoman statesmen of some kind. I don't remember what it was exactly, and I don't actually know how they came to power in Albania exactly either. I think that's all detailed on their Wikipedia page. It's not that crazy interesting anyway, but I think they were also an interesting case of a well-intended what's the word? Intending, well-intentioned royal family, let's say, like King Otto of Greece, because obviously the King Zog was a bit weird, so he did how do you say, he did what do you call it, like he was a dictator, right? So he did institute like a dictatorship, basically. And so he wasn't like a constitutional monarchist, let's to put it lightly. But like I think he had one heir, and he didn't really like. I think before his tenure was over, they had already exiled him, and I think he died in South Africa or something. He had an American wife. But his family is still around, and they're still Albanian celebrities. They're not royalty anymore, but they do like philanthropy and stuff like that. But they seem to be a fairly honest bunch, and they seem to be still fairly beloved, I think. I might be wrong though, but that's the impression I got from the things I read about them and stuff like that. So maybe interesting. And then we have we have communism in Albania. We had Hoxha. What was his name again? I think it was Edmund. No, Edmund Hoxha. Wait, I don't remember. Let me just Google it 1 second. I should probably had added it to the slides. Enver Hoxha, that was the name. Yeah. So he ruled there for a while. It was the borders were closed. It was not much was happening. I think it was kind of a how do you say, like a preparation phase for the next phase in Albanian nationalism, to be honest, because there's a lot of weird, because it's no accident that when communism fell, the borders opened and they started migrating like crazy, and they started and just hoarding basically jobs and money abroad to build up their country. There was this craze going on. It's a very weird. I don't know. I don't know if it's instinct or if it was like, kind of. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm speculating too much. Anyway, so we have Albanian migrants in Greece. That's what I told you about earlier. And then we have the Kosovo War. This is also a very interesting chapter in this whole thing. I remember when this happened, I was still in Grundschule in Berlin. And back then it was a big thing. But if you think back to it, it's really weird. Like, why was Bill Clinton and these foreign powers so invested in defending the UTK cause against the Serbs? it was a very strange thing. And the funny thing is, like around the same time, oh yeah, and I didn't even finish my story about Koljas, but we'll get back to it here, because around the same time, this guy Aristides Koljas, he was a lawyer, and he was of Arvanite descent from, I don't remember where he was from, but it's too much of a hassle to look at now. But he was. He wrote this book, and he was busy. How do you say? He was busy representing Albanian migrants in court to get them passports and things like that. So he was very sympathetic to the Albanian cause as an Arvanite himself, and he was one of the Arvanites that felt that the Albanians are their brothers, and we have a duty to help them. And to be there, to reunite with them. So he appeared on TV defending the cause of the Albanian Kosovars on shows where he was literally the only one who was defending the Albanian cause. Everyone else was on the side of the Serbs. And they were all constantly kind of pushing in on his arguments, and interrupting him and doing things and this and that. So those shows, if you look them up, they're very interesting to look at, because it shows you the general spirit of the Greeks. There's this weird thing where when you start talking about Albanians, they get very uncomfortable. And the thing about him is that he died at 45 or something from leukemia, allegedly. But there are claims that he has, because he had Albanian friends and things like that, and they claim that he was poisoned. They claim that he was assassinated. So the thing is about these subjects, they're very, very sensitive here in Greece, and I think I just saw an article today about the Greek Secret Service, being on the watch out for Albanian spies and things like that. So yeah. Anyway, so there are stories about people being, losing their lives over this. So at any rate, we can't confirm any of that, but at any rate, we should also probably say a few things about North Macedonia, even though it's actually technically unrelated because they're Bulgarians. Funny thing is, it seems to me that both Albanians and Greeks don't like them, except for the fact that they have an Albanian minority as well. So the Albanians are still kind of invested in Macedonia. Actually, they are invested in Macedonia because they believe that the Macedonians are Albanians, and that Alexander the Great was an Albanian as well. But and they have a minority there, so at the very least they're going to defend that. But yeah, it seems to me that that state was imposed there to create further division between in the region. Then we have Albanians and modern day Arvanites, and that's an interesting phenomenon as well, because the thing is, when the borders opened and they came into the country, everyone was surprised to find out that we were speaking the same language, and that we had the same words and things like that. So even the Greek speakers found out we have words in common with the Albanians that we can't explain because they're not Greek words, right? So we have very normal words, like flower is luludi. In Albanian, it's lulje. In ancient Greek, it's anthos. We still say anthos sometimes, but anthos just sounds kind of uppity. So usually we say luludi. The word for a young lady is kopela. Also comes from Albanian, is kopilje. The word for neighbor is gitonas. It comes from gitone, which is also Albanian. Things like that. So very, very day-to-day words that we use in modern Greek are mostly all Albanian. But the thing is, like, the Albanians were even more surprised to find out that there were native speakers in Greece that had lived there since the Middle Ages, at least. So they found out there's a dialect, that is basically ancient Albanian. They can recognize it. They can understand a good part of it, and they started taking that knowledge home and expanding on it. So a big part of modern day Albanian nationalism is talking about the Arvanites and about other communities as well. We have the Arberesh in Italy, in Calabria. And those are a different story, because those are they accept their Albanian heritage, as it were. But there's something to be said for this whole acceptance, let's say, to being an Italian propaganda device, let's say. So it's a bit double, but at the same time, me as a writer who's trying to write in the language, for me, Arberesh is very interesting because they have preserved the medieval Albanian language in probably its purest form. Something the Arvanites haven't been able to do because it has degenerated. They've lost a lot of words and things like that. Well, at the same time, but at the same time, I have some skepticism about them because they're in Italy. they're Catholic, but they follow the Eastern Rite, so it's a bit weird there as well. So there's something shady about that topic, in my opinion. But that, I mean, maybe I'm just being overly suspicious. But at any rate, now we also have second and third generation Albanians in Greece. And a lot of them integrate very well. So they take to the Greek language enormously well. The thing is, like, Albanians have a knack for foreign languages because they have a very broad range of sounds in their own language. Like, the Albanian language has about 36 letters. They're not exactly letters. A lot of them are like constructs, or like pairs of letters. Like the DH is a th. The TH is a th, stuff like that. But you also have the sound, which is the E with the umlaut. And you have the J. So and I also think the Albanian language is one of the first languages that actually use the J. So if it's really as old as they say it is, then we know how old the letter J is, because that's basically where we see it, where it's first used. Yeah. So the letter J is very important because it's also pronounced in letters where it's not written. So, for example, the L, you have two L's. You have the single L and the double L, right? So the single L is pronounced L, but sometimes it's pronounced L, and the double L is usually pronounced ul. But that's in Albanian. In Arvanitica, the single L is almost always pronounced L, while the double L is simply a normal L. So the L and the Ny and all these sounds also exist. And that's also, if you write it in Greek, we don't have the J, or we don't have the Q, or we don't have the J, so we usually write it with an I, with a iota. Anyway, so yeah, but the second and third generation Albanian migrants that we have now are also an interesting case, because they're now having to go through the growing pains of integrating into Greece. They're now fighting for they're fighting for their parents' retirement fund. They're not being paid. They're trying to retire here in Greece, and they're not getting their retirement. Things like that. It's just ridiculous. But they're making do, and to me, like, if you see, like, those people, they're model citizens. They're perfectly Hellenized. They study hard, they work hard, they make careers. It's an interesting bunch, because they seem like they they're trying to prove a point. They're motivated to do something. So I have I have great sympathy for them.
So are you saying they're paying taxes, but they're not getting a retirement?
Yeah.
How is that even possible?
It's
and I mean, even on the basic equality or whatever level, everywhere else, people would be
I'm
up
not
in
sure
arms.
if they're even getting passports. I think that's where it where it all starts.
I don't want to say it again, but again, Greater Israel.
I mean, yeah. Bro, I'm getting to it. Just give me give me half an hour or something.
Just because this sounds to me so many strange parallels. This is very strange. Yeah.
So because this slide is what I'm getting at, right? This is how I view this whole scenario in the context of Fomenko's new chronology. So we're literally getting at it. So the Stratioti in a different light. As I pointed out earlier, we see the depiction of the Stratioti with the crescent on the flag, right? So there's some weird stuff there. The dress doesn't add up. It just, the hats, there's something weird about those as well. I think that the Stratioti were the same as the Akrites or the Janissaries in the early Ottoman Empire. So my theory is that it was originally all what we now call the Ottoman Empire, or what we could call Tartaria. But this region is like the linchpin of where this all went down, because Constantinople is very important in this whole picture, right? I think we can agree on that. So what I think is it was originally the original empire, there was like Christo-Muslim, this original religion, and I think it was just a generic form of Gnosticism, which maybe already had a Christ figure, but probably not, because probably Christ was born in Constantinople. And I think what happened is basically his teachings, not his teachings, like his death basically, and his the adoption of his teachings by this priesthood, and the proliferation of that knowledge, of that information, is what created a rogue state within the Ottoman Empire, which is what we now call Byzantium, which existed for like maybe 70 years or maybe more, maybe like 200 years or something. We don't know, and I think that's what created this whole division between the Albanians as well, because I think the Janissaries basically split. You had the Muslim Janissaries, and then you had a new class of Christian Janissaries that became the Tsoljados that we now have, the Armatoli, let's say, and the Akrites, and they became all Hellenized, or like partially Hellenized, because they still didn't speak the language, but they became Christianized at any rate. And they were, and they were tasked to protect the Byzantine Empire from the Franks and the Ottomans trying to reconquer it, basically, because they were all part of the same empire originally. I think that's what basically happened. So Rumeli and the Roman Empire is basically that. So Byzantium actually came first. The Ottomans reconquered it, and the priesthood, the Fanariotes, fled to Rumeli, but most of them fled to Rome, and they founded the Vatican. And then you had a second split in Christianity, the schism, and that's where basically things got complicated, if that makes sense. So I think I've already basically covered all of these points. I didn't even have to touch on them. Recapturing Constantinople, Akrites and Janissaries, those were the Stratioti, right? The Franks in the Fourth Crusade, okay, I covered those as well, right? So the first attempt to reconquer Constantinople came from the west. And I think there were two Islamic empires. You had Tartaria and Barbaria. So first came the Franks, who were, the Moors and whatever. They tried to conquer Constantinople. They succeeded. We had the Francocratia for a while, and then they reconquered it, maybe even, and then the Ottomans retook it. So I think that's kind of what happened. But then we come to the Fanariots, and the Fanariots are, I think they are the linchpin of this whole story. So the Fanariots, my theory is that they're Hebrews. that they descend from the tribe of Dan, more or less. And they've adopted because they're the creators of Hellenism, of all this fantastic literature, philology, because they were writers, they were intellectuals, they had studied, they were writing all the time, and they were priests, so they had gathered all this secret knowledge from Egypt and Babylon and whatever. So all this symbolism from all these ancient mysteries was juxtaposed over Christianity, and they created this new sect, which later on became Roman Catholicism and Orthodoxy, and Christian Orthodoxy. And so my theory is that they're basically Helleno-Zionists. Their Jerusalem is Constantinople. They want Constantinople. And the whole reason why Greece exists is because they had to settle for Greece. They don't give a shit about Greece, about the mainland of Greece. They care about Anatolia, about Turkey, and about Constantinople, and maybe a part of Thrace and Russia. Maybe you could even move it up to Ukraine, part of Crimea or something. So that's my theory about the Phanariots. And then we have some other notes I wanted to make to just tie it all together, right? So we have the EV13 haplogroup that is associated with the Pelasgians. The three nations that have the highest percentage of it are Greece, Albania, and Kosovo. And they're very close to each other. So Greece has like 34%, Albania has 35%, and Kosovo has 36% or something like that. There are countries, in the surrounding areas that have the haplogroup as well. And for some reason, there's a spike of the EV13 haplogroup specifically in Wales. And there's a theory that the Welsh descend from Albanian mercenaries as well. And their languages are pretty similar too, by the way. If you check with Duolingo, I think you'll be able to confirm that. But
you mentioned the King of Greece, right? Or former, the lineage coming from Greece in terms of the modern British royal family, no?
Well, yeah, well, they were German families. So both of them were. So we had what was King Otto again? I don't remember what his house was. Wait, King Otto of. Yeah, I don't remember now. Of Wittelsbach. So he was German, and the Glücksburgs were German as well. So yeah, maybe in an indirect way you could say that. But there's another thing to that that I want to get back to, and that's the whole creation myth of Britain. Because they claim they descend from the Trojans, and the same goes for the Romans, right? The Romans also claim they descend from the Trojans, and even if we take Fomenko's timeline into account, that still makes sense if they descend from the Phanariots, who descend from the tribe of Dan. So they're basically the Dardanians. So they're basically Trojans. So there's this whole. But I'll get to that because that's very important. I think this is the core of what this whole story is about. Because the thing is, like, as I said, Kosovo is associated with Dardania, and we have here, right? If we get to, we'll skip a few steps and we'll get to alchemical vexillology, right? We've had this talk a few times, I think, in the Telegram with Raphael and the guys. But so my theory is, I've taken this from Sean Ross and his interpretation of Upper and Lower Egypt in the red, white, and blue flags. So you have the white, which is is Upper Egypt, I think, and the red is Lower Egypt, and they each have their own crown in their respective colors. And then you have the blue crown of war. So the Greek flag is white and blue. So it is considered the Upper Egypt, but it is in a state of war, and that's no surprise either, because they're still trying to get Constantinople. Meanwhile, Albania is Lower Egypt, and it's red. And then, but the funny thing is, in the national dresses, it's the other way around, right? So the Arvanites are wearing the red hats, while the Albanians are wearing the white hats. That's also pretty interesting. And I think that's about a alchemical process that they're trying to get going. And the gold we see up here. So Dardania is the goal, and that's what the symbolism of this flag is. It's surrounded by blue, so that's war again. But obviously the map of the country itself is in gold, and then we have the stars on top, right? So those are from the European flag. But my theory is that these are the foreign powers that are watching over this area, and there's a reason why they do, because so first of all, in Christian eschatology, they claim that the Antichrist will come from the tribe of Dan. So we get back to Albert Pike, who speaks so highly of the Albanians being the most ancient nation in Europe. You know, and it suddenly starts making sense, because they're actually hoping that one of these countries, and I think it will be this one, will yield this figure they're waiting for, the new Messiah. By the way, it's no coincidence either, I think, that Mother Teresa comes from Kosovo, right?
And I mean, the whole Kosovo thing in itself is super suspicious, and also how they were granted like this halfway whatever state they have, but they get their own flag. And there's not many except Cyprus, I think, who put themselves on the flag.
Yeah.
And there's 6 stars here. I mean, 6 times, whatever anyone wants to think about that.
6 times 5, maybe 30.
I also thought that immediately. Yeah.
Interesting. But yeah, so far about the alchemical vexillology, let's say. But yeah, there's a few other aspects to it. We have the language of birds. So Pelasgian is identified, or Arvanite. The Arvanite language is identified as the language of birds, and I would put Albanian with that as well. And that's a big mystery as to why that is. Right? We're talking with Pirate in Raphael's chat about this subject, and we might expand on it further later on at some point. But there's a double entendre to what we mean under the language of birds, because he is reading up on French mystics and esotericists that are studying this language of birds and are more trying to explain it as a way of thinking and speaking. While at the same time, I am taking it literally and basically interpreting Arvanitica as this language of birds. And I have my theories as to why that is. I think there's definitely something strange about the language, something something special, let's say. But I think it's a bit too early for me to say for sure. But I think my poetry is an indication, but that remains subjective, unfortunately. So I can't really, and it's hard to convey the discoveries I'm making that way to you. But at any rate, we have some other aspects as well. We have this whole thing, right? We have Gnosticism, Orphism. We have the rites of Eleusis in ancient Greece, and the rites of Dionysus. Those 3 are all connected, obviously, because Orphism is the religion of Dionysus. So basically, the funny thing is, and this is like mainstream history, accepted basically. In ancient Greece, there was a substratum of cults that followed a different tradition than the mainstream Olympian religion, right? So they also had a number of gods, but their highest deity wasn't Zeus but Dionysus, and Dionysus is the god of wine and of ecstasy and all this stuff. So there's some weird indications. I think those are related to the pre-Hellenic Pelasgian strata that existed, and I think that we find remnants of those beliefs, back in modern day Albanian and Arvanite traditions. And I think that's where they come from. It's not so much it's because there are Dionysian rites that are still being celebrated. We still have the Kurbania and things like that, and this whole ritualistic way of performing music and things like that as well. That all seems to kind of fall in line there, but I'm still just speculating. Then we have another subject that interests me very much, and that's the Geg, right? So the Geg are an interesting case. They're one of the two big pharaohs of in Albania, northern Albania specifically, as I said. But they seem to be a different. There's something strange about them. They seem to be of different stock than the Tusk entirely, right? They have German physiognomies. They have harsher features. They're more often blonde than the Tusk, blonde and blue-eyed. They have this brachycephaly thing going on, so they tend to have more shallow skulls, let's say, and so on and so forth. Now there's some other things that obviously the name Geg seems to be cognate to Gigadus, giants, and to Gog and Magog. Right, those are my theories, and obviously, if we combine that with Skanderbeg and Dulkarnain and things like that, and the mountainous region in Albania, there are some parallels to be found with the Caucasus and the Iron Gates. And there's a mountain in Albania close to Tirana, which is called Malit Tartarit, which means the mountain of the Tartars. Don't ask me why, that's what the mountain is called. So my suspicion is that we're much closer related to the Scythians and the Tartars than we claim, but that there is a Pelasgian element because this EV13 haplogroup is an objective fact that exists in these countries. And there's something weird going on there, because I do think there's a level of autochthony that we did actually exist here since antiquity, only we need to push antiquity further closer to us and rethink what that actually means and who the Pelasgians are. But the Geg, so the Geg are associated with the Illyrians. So there is a theory. So this Kostas Biris, for example, who wrote this magnum opus on the Arvanites, he claims that the Geg are Illyrians and the Tusk are Dorians. So the Tusk are closer related to the Greeks, while the Illyrians, the Geg, are more closely related to like the Celts and the Germans and stuff like that. And there's another thing, because like one of the famous queens of Albania, her name was Queen Teuta. And that's cognate to the Teutons and the Germans, the Deutsch, and Deutschland. So there's some weird connections there as well. So I suspect that the Geg are basically a Germanic tribe, if you will. And there's some other things there as well, because for some reason the Swiss have an obsession with Albania as well. So they send their archaeologists there for whatever reason and things like that. And I think they have a thing for the Geg. I think they have a thing for they see them as related because they're basically they're basically mountaineers as well. They're Highlanders as well, just like the Swiss are. And it's also no surprise that, for example, Scotland is also one of the Templar strongholds, let's say. So there's definitely some connection there as well. And then not only that, Switzerland also has an obsession with Mongolia, and that's I just wanted to add that there because maybe I should because there's a little YouTube short about that will blow your mind. Let's see if I can find it. Switzerland, Mongolia. Something like that. I think it was Where is it? I'll post it in the chat if I find it. Switzerland.
All right.
This is like a how do you say a tangent. Wait, is this it? No, this isn't. This isn't the one. Well, okay, I can find it now. But the thing. Oh yeah. No, I found it. Okay. So check this out, guys. You want to put it? Want to put it on, or should I share it on my screen?
You can just share it if you like.
Okay. Give me a second. Slides. I'm almost done, by the way. Just Switzerland. Wait, where's the screen? Here it is. Share. Is it playing? Oh, no, it's playing.
Not yet. Yeah, but the usual issue with the sound, I guess. So just
okay,
have to tell us what happens.
So you take Mongolia and you take Switzerland. You turn it upside down. Yeah, really cool. Very nice. Is he gonna do it? Well, come on, dude. Okay. Well, okay. He doesn't show it. There was another video that was better.
Imagine what he was about to do, which was to resize him, and they are the same shape, supposedly.
Exactly, they are exactly the same shape, dude.
It's easy enough to verify for everyone. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and it's the funny thing is they're on the same latitude, and you also have Edelweiss in Mongolia. Did you know that?
Edelweiss, really? That's actually the Austrian supposedly national symbol.
Yeah, well, it's also Swiss. Right. But I mean, it grows in the Alps, so it's it's, and I mean, the Germans also had it. The Nazis also used the Edelweiss in their regalia and stuff like that. But so but the thing is, the Swiss and the Mongolians, they also have this brachycephaly thing, right? So there's more than just the latitude and the similar lifestyle and the climate and things like that. It's also that there seems to be an actual relation. They seem to actually be related with each other. And I think it's all connected to Gog and Magog, dude. I think I think these people, there's something about this brachycephaly thing. They have a different mindset, and they, I don't know. I don't want to speculate too much. But yeah. So back to my slides. 1 second and I'll be almost done. There you go. Yes. So then we have another thing. We have the Jews of Salonika. Thessaloniki is world famous for having been one of the hotspots, or one of the, let's say, well, yeah. I mean, they had one of the largest Jewish populations in Europe for the longest time, and a lot of them came from Spain. So a lot of them were Sephardim specifically, and I think that's also another one of those things, right? I think the Helleno-Zionists are of the Sephardim stock, while the Judeo-Zionists are of Ashkenazim stock, right? So I think it's pretty clear, and I don't think they like each other either. But I think they have the same tendencies, the same mindset, and they cause the same problems for everyone. So yeah, at any rate, whatever. But I honestly, I do think, though, to some degree, the Phanariots, the Hellenic Jews, the Hellenic Hebrews, let's say, who are Christian now, they're Christian Hebrews. I think they're they have good intentions in for a large part. I think they just they're just too arrogant to see the error of their ways. That's what I think is really happening. I don't think they realize the damage they've done to the people they've occupied, because they're the occupants. The funny thing is, like, Greek propaganda likes to say that we've lived under Turkish occupation for 400 years.
That's
which
what
is
everyone likes
absolute
to say. Also,
fucking
Austria
bullshit.
is. Oh, sorry, not Austria. Hungary was supposedly under under Ottoman occupation as well. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's a bullshit narrative. We were Ottoman subjects. We were living just fine, and I think most of the Arvanites were, they had prestigious positions as well. They were they were warriors, so they were valued by the Ottoman Empire, and they worked as janissaries until they got Christianized, and then they lost all their prestige. And it's no coincidence either. So it's pretty interesting, because that seems to indicate that maybe we have been the traitors and not the Albanians, and we like to accuse the Albanians of being Turco-Albanians and this and that. But meanwhile, we have depictions of, like, pyramids that the Greeks built with Albanian heads, and not even skulls, they just fresh off their corpses. Things like that,
Talking about this in terms of oppression, at least according to what Gleb Nosovsky of the New Chronology says, the way he describes it sounds more like a paradise for the common folk, and that the administrators and royals actually were the ones under burden or whatever, which may be part of the reason why whatever was there before broke up. But even just this concept of actually having a government or administration that really wants to take care of everything is astounding, of course, in today's terminology. Or the idea that actually those individuals really would be serving and maybe have a difficult time doing it in order so that the masses could enjoy themselves or have as low taxes and so on as possible and as much security as possible.
Yeah, so, exactly.
But that then of course later in historical decision is being termed an oppression or an occupation, potentially, again, according to Gleb Nosovsky. So just pointing that out.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I think there was also another aspect to it, because we like the Phanariots they're a bureaucratic class, right? They're a class of bureaucrats. That was their whole job throughout their whole history, and that's what they're still doing. So our government is mostly composed of these people. Now, the thing is, obviously, if you were living in an empire like the one they were working under, apparently, I think the pressure was also pretty high on them to keep everything in check and everything running. And I think that might also have been part of the reason why they tried to break loose, let's say. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's all somehow justifiable, but yeah, I don't know. So yeah, and the last thing I wanted to kind of touch upon, but I think I already did, was the Venetian influence. So as I said, Italy has still to this day has a great influence and is very mindful of its influence on Albania, because they want that buffer state, because they're competing with Greece for control in the Mediterranean. But at the same time, we still have our Phanariot, a lot of the Phanariot elite that we have, the oligarchs that we have, they become shipwrights, right? So one of the biggest ones we have now is Marinakis. He's the owner of the Olympiakos football club. And he has stated officially that he is of Phanariot descent. And Onassis was just like that, was the same deal, and was the other guy, Niarchos, and all these big. So the elites that we have, the oligarchs, the big kahunas, they're all the big moguls. They're all shipwrights. They all have big fleets and transport all kinds of goods, whether legal or not, across the globe, or the disc, if you prefer. So I think they are related to the Venetians as well, to some extent, if we accept that the Venetians are a continuation of the Phoenicians as well, things like that. So we can all assume that, I think. So yeah, it's all one big mess, and that's kind of where we end. I had a quote of a poem by Odysseus Xirtus. He's a Greek poet that's allegedly also of Arvanite descent, and he wrote this thing where he says, well, I don't know if you want me to read the whole thing, but he basically says that my homeland is a mural with multiple successive layers, be they Frankish or Slavic, and I think he also implies that Arvanite and Turkish are part of those as well. Which, if you happen to try to either to scratch them or repair them, you will go to prison immediately. The reason why I speculate he also implies Arvanitica as part of it is because he starts with, I know this is all nothing, and that the language I speak doesn't have an alphabet. That's literally what he says. Since even the sun and the waves are a syllabic script, which you only which you can only decrypt in times of sadness and exile. So this is all very telling. I think there's it's a very complex story, and I think a lot of Arvanites suffer from sunken cost fallacy. They've invested a lot in this country. They've fought for it. They've bled for it. They've died for it. They've come to believe in the Greek values and everything. And obviously, there is something to be said for them. Obviously, I don't want to tell people not to be Greek. I'm still Greek myself. I speak the language, but I think it would do us well to start understanding the context better, maybe, and maybe start learning this weird language that we used to speak, and see, because there's a lot to be, I don't know, in my opinion, there's a lot to gain from learning a new language. We could foster new relationships with our neighbors. I do think it's part of our destiny as Greece to lead the Balkans into a new era and whatever. There's a lot of people who actually believe that. I think we have the potential to do so, but we have to be honest to ourselves. I think that's the core of it all.
Yeah, I heard similar stories regarding Europe and, for example, the German-speaking region and so on, or even for the world, what they could do and so on. But in the end, it's probably just what you say, the ones who are honest to themselves first, they will be the ones to lead everybody else.
Yeah. Well, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed is king, That's kind of how that goes.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much for this amazing presentation. I'm not sure if Andreas maybe had to go off. I think it was amazing, really well done. You did a great job explaining everything. I also really like the design of the slides. And since I'm wholly unqualified to be go any deeper than what you've presented, I'll be looking at it more. I forwarded it to some researchers.
I can send you the slideshow as well if you'd like.
Oh, for sure. We can also do that. And then we'll come back another time and see what we can continue exploring further, either here or on at Nachiketa Fire's channel. To anyone who's interested, now usually on Fridays we do watch parties, but Nachiketa is streaming insanely great interviews all the time, just like Andreas is. So let me give a short promo for Andreas too. Everyone check out my favorite Italian. It's the Illuminati. Leo Zagami was interviewed
I just saw
again
that video today.
yesterday
really
by
great.
Andreas. So just to give a promo shout out to that as well. You don't currently have any website or anything, so if people want to reach out to you, they should.
Well, I do. I have my blog.
Can you maybe share the link, or just open it up on your browser? Then we can just briefly show everybody so they know where to find stuff, and anybody who's interested, they can look it up and
exactly.
See more.
I can do both. Let me just see. Share screen again. This time it's this one. Okay. All right. So my page is Juga. Zo goed. You can also go by .com, but it's .wordpress.com officially. I've bought the domain to make things easier. But yeah, this is where I post my poetry. I'm trying to do a reconstruction of the language. That's basically what's happening. It's debatable how authentic it is. Obviously, I'm not a native speaker, so that's a big challenge. But what I do is there are some dictionaries that have been released. I own a couple of them. There's also a few that are available in PDF. So those shed a lot of light on what words they may have been using in those times. But like if I speak to native speakers whom I've been able to meet, let's say online, there's this one actually, just one. He's pretty old and he's pretty stuck in his ways, to be fair. He's a very nice guy, obviously, but in his opinion, I'm doing everything wrong. And obviously his advice is very valuable in terms of grammar and stuff. He doesn't agree with the way I spell things, but there's a logic to that. I've made a whole table. Let's go all the way down here. I made a whole table.
The other question is, to what extent were these things really standardized at the time? That's the other question.
They weren't. Yeah, they weren't. So, and the thing is, like, everyone wrote in whatever language or whatever writing they learned. So we have Albanian text preserved in Arabic, in Greek, and in Latin characters. Why? For some reason, it won't open now. So anyway, I've made a whole table. You'll find it on the blog with explaining how every letter is pronounced and things like that as well, how I use them. But I try my aim is to make things as clear as possible, to revitalize the language, to reinstate like some older words that have been lost in time and things like that. And obviously to create hopefully a beautiful work that people can refer to later on, and it might be a foundation for other writers to experiment with and to start working on as well. So obviously it's all very simple. It's mostly haikus and tankas, because I'm basically just writing sentences. I'm trying to practice the language for myself.
To start somewhere, right? So
yeah, exactly. So yeah, so if you're interested, you can find the link in the chat, and I'm always happy to hear your feedback. If you speak the language, even better. And hopefully I can I found a publisher, so hopefully I can publish it soon and get things going.
Perfect. Well then, without further ado, I'll say thank you very much. Thanks everyone in chat. Thank you, Andreas, for hosting, and catch y'all next time. Thank you, Manifestopheles.
Thank you. Bye-bye.